tuned in to the cold, hard truth. Cayman's #1 hard-hitting live podcast show, where we feature some straightforward conversations on political, social, and celebrity news and all things happening in the Cayman Islands and around the world. This show was created to give the people a voice and a means of being involved and informed without any filters. Sometimes it gets crazy, but we always keep it real. We bring you the tea, piping hot, so grab your favorite beverage and join the conversation via WhatsApp at 324-1612. Email tips@CaymanMarlRoad.com. Now, here's your host, Sandy Hill, broadcasting live from the beautiful Cayman Islands.
Good Hanson song for sure.
That was a hit.
Yeah, every song from 1997 this morning. If there's something you want to hear, 943-1061.
Big news. I have some important news for you. Interesting news.
It's Blake and Aaron's Spilling the Tea with Sandy.
Cayman's top news headlines of the day from CMR.
Morning, Sandy. How are you?
Morning.
We're going back to the year 1997 this morning. So hopefully you're coming with your song. We've got a lot of good ones coming up. She's not there yet.
Yeah.
Still putting the mic on.
We'll sort it out eventually. But yeah, no, you know what? I used to draw. So middle of nowhere, Hanson.
Good morning.
Oh, there she is. You could make like a little Hanson H, MON. So you could do like little. I used to draw MON everywhere with like the little logo design. Anyway, that was all over my binders.
You still do that. Happy Friday, Sandy.
Hey, happy Friday. What's going on, guys?
A lot is going on. We're actually bringing you the headlines today.
Wow.
Yeah.
Tell me.
Exactly.
Making it easier for you, I guess.
Well, today is Jamaican Independence Day. Which is
yes.
59th Independence year, or anniversary, I should say.
Yeah.
From those British folk. Also, we wanted to ask you what happened with your CUC bill. Did you find out what the deal is?
Yes, I'm glad you asked, actually, because there was something amiss.
Okay, was I right or
no, you were not right.
Okay.
It wasn't that issue, but as I suspected, because when I looked at my kilowatt hour, it just didn't look right. And apparently, it was a perfect storm with higher usage, higher fuel prices, but there was something going on with the solar panels.
Oh no!
So I was right.
So a breaker
Oh,
stopped working. It tripped out or something. And this is the thing, like, how do you know when these things happen?
you get a high bill. That's when you know.
Yeah, after the
Yeah.
fact. It's kind of like having that leak and you don't know till you get $10,000 bill from the water authority, and then you're like, what's
That's
going
right.
on?
Yeah, exactly.
So you may or may not have heard that there's a $100,000 vaccination lottery.
Ooh, of course we heard.
So we're just
I'll be
trying
throwing
to
my
find,
hat in the ring for that.
It's kind of a
yeah,
big
exactly.
deal.
We're trying to find if there's anyone out there that's not vaccinated, give us a call. We'll escort you there because we get to refer a friend.
What I could do with $100,000 right now, the list is pretty long.
Fix your solar panel.
Yeah. So DMS
Pay your CUC bill.
DMS organization launched its own vaccination lottery program to increase the vaccinated population of Cayman.
Mhm.
And they're going to sponsor the lottery to incentivize all residents to get vaxxed and enter to win a single cash prize drawing of $100,000. How cool. And it is for people that have previously been vaccinated, those that haven't been vaccinated yet, and you can also refer a friend. Now, if you refer a friend, you can refer as many friends as you want, and that's your multiple entry.
But you have to go to the clinic with them.
Yeah.
So again, call us up 943-106-10. Like there, we'll escort you.
Yes, we will escort you. So if you're vaccinated, you get entered in once, and depending on how many friends you enter, you can enter multiple times. So
nice.
Yeah, there you go. $100,000. That'd be nice, right?
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I'm gonna be loading up a bus full of friends.
I know, right?
What do you got this morning for us?
Well, I was gonna tell you about the lotto, but thanks for thanks for breaking that.
Pretty sure we know.
Yes, awesome. Well, we have, in light of what's been going on with CUC and all the complaints. I mean, the WhatsApp, when you go on Facebook, the Facebook status messages, every other one is like CUC, like I need therapy now because of my CUC.
You probably got to win this $100,000 lottery,
right?
Go straight to CUC though.
Yeah, so they're coming on the show this morning, which is good, to talk to us about, essentially what we need to do, if there's anything we can do to try to help ease through the higher summer bills. So, tips and tricks and I don't know. So we're here for it. They're going to hopefully answer some of our questions. We also have a Yale professor of economics joining us this morning. So it's a bit of a heavy hitter show. And he's going to, tell us a little bit about the economy during COVID. And once again, if there's anything at all that we can do to kind of ride it out and see what happens. So it's quite an honor to have him on.
All right. Well, cool. So, today is Old School Fridays on Blake and Aaron.
Yes.
We're going back to the year 1997, as I mentioned. As a matter of fact, I meant to play this for your open this morning. Do you remember this from 1997?
I have a song.
Wait a minute.
And we are going
we want you to do the dance.
We're going to go with Chumbawamba.
All right.
Chumbawamba.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Tub thumping.
So
that album it was green. It was lime green. I can't remember what it was called. I remember
Tub thumping. We've got that. We'll play that for you coming up.
Awesome.
For sure.
Awesome.
Sounds good.
You not want to do the Macarena with us? Come on.
Oh my gosh. I can't even. How did it go again? Yes. And then, the other day at my daughter's school, they were doing it. And I was kind of like chuckling to myself because it was like a real throwback moment.
Yeah.
I'm like, if these kids even knew how old that song was, way before their time, for sure.
It was everywhere. And every wedding had it. Every school.
You know that it was a big deal when Oprah had it on her show.
Yeah.
That's when I was like, wow, this song has really eclipsed.
All right. Well, have a great show. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, guys. You
Happy
too.
Friday. We'll see you Monday morning. All right.
Awesome. Good stuff. Enjoy the weekend, Blake and Aaron. Lots going on this weekend, by the way. Lots of carnival events. K-Mass is up. So, that's pretty cool and exciting. So good morning to John. Did I misspell economics? What did I have up? Oh, I was so tired last night. No, I have economics. I was wondering why you had economics in quotes. I'm like, what did I miss? Yeah, so we do have Mr. Ahmed. I don't want to mess up his name, but I feel like I'm going to do it anyway. Mushfiq Mobarak. That's about as good as it's probably going to get. I did say to him, send me your name so that I can make sure that I get it right. So he's going to be joining us about 8 o'clock this morning. So yes, that's going to be interesting. And then after him, we have the vice president from CUC, Customer Service and Technology, Mr. Sasha Tibbetts. Yes. So we'll get into all of those things here in a bit, but we got a little bit of free time on Friday. So, by the way, the flag around government buildings today will be flown at half-mast in observance of the passing of Mr. Wesley Howell, who passed away, as you guys remember, on July the 23rd at the age of 106. He is the oldest, well, he was the oldest Caymanian, and oldest resident alive. So I think a lady that we posted last week, it was her birthday. I think she's 101 or 102. I think she's now the oldest, but I'm still in awe of Mr. Howell. 106 is just amazing. I can't even. Yeah, that's crazy. So, Evelyn, good morning. Good morning, Morna. Good morning, Olivia. Did you guys see the picture that I posted yesterday of some mugs? Well, they're coming soon, and I basically got a short shipment. So in other words, an emergency supply, because honey child, y'all been messaging me. I didn't get my mug. And I'm like, ugh. So we've added, give me 1 second. I'm actually going to pull up the picture here. We've added a little something. I don't know if you guys noticed it or not. But since I was getting so many people requesting a signature, I thought, well, why not add a signature? Yeah, so look at this. Let me see where it is now. Look at this. Isn't this cool? Whoa, look at that. Yes, honey child. Beautiful. Very nice. I can still sign on the bottom if you want like a little extra signature, but I feel like those are gonna wear off. So I was kind of like, maybe what we do is we put it on there, and then that way, you know, you always have it. Yeah, pretty cool. So congratulations again to Louie, who won our mugshot competition. When we get this batch in, maybe we'll do another mugshot competition. So Louie, I still need to go and collect your prize from Cellular World, but don't worry. It's been a busy couple days because, you know, August is my birthday and my daughter's birthday month. And so we have a lot of celebrating to do. Lots of parties to plan. Well, not lots. One party, which is her party. I don't get a party anymore. I told you guys this. Once it's your birthday and then you have a child born close to your birthday, that's it. You got a luck. You don't get any more celebrations. You get to celebrate with your child. So, yes, I knew I was going to butcher his name. Trust me. Okay, let me try it again. I'll get it when he comes on because I'm going to go back and listen to what he said. Mushfiq Mobarak. Mobarak. Let's just call him the esteemed professor for short. Did I ever tell you guys about the time when I was in university By the way, lately I've been reminiscing about my university days, like my first university at USF. I don't know why. I think in life you go through these stages where you're like, oh my gosh, remember when I was 18 in university? That's been a minute. Oh man, I'm telling you, it's hitting me recently how long ago that was. Because I come across a photo of someone who went to university with me, and I was like, oh my gosh, is that really 30 years ago? I mean, it's unbelievable, but it is. And then you start to feel a little bit like I'm getting old. But anyway, we're going to keep young at heart. So, yes, I was reminiscing about USF life and all of the interesting things that you do when you're in university. Wow, what an amazing adventure and an amazing time in your life. You're just so young and fresh, and it's kind of one of those things where you feel like the world really is your oyster. Like you could do anything, you can achieve anything, you get to meet so many interesting people. And I was just thinking when I was trying to pronounce the professor's name, we had this young man from the United Arab Emirates, and his name was kind of complicated. And he said, you know what, just call me Al. Because it was like Al, something else, like a really long name. And he was like, he got it. And he was like, just call me Al. And I found that interestingly enough, a lot of the international students, they really sought to fit in. Even like some of the guys from Japan that I met, they would not, I don't think legally change your name, although I think if they moved to the US, a lot of them would. They would change it to something really easy. If it was something difficult to pronounce, they were just like, call me Mary. I'm going to just change my name to Mary. So that's super interesting. Good morning, Marshall. Olivia's here. Irvlyn is here. Larry, good morning. How are you? Happy Friday. Yes, Louie, it's Friday. Miss Emma, there you are. Wishing everybody a safe weekend with caution. God bless you too. Felicia is here. Irvlyn said, please add my name to that lottery. Please and thanks. Yes, honey child. What would you do with $100,000? Well, I know what I would do. Diamond Princess, good morning. Hi, Jazara. Miss Iva's here. Still in quarantine? Now, Miss Iva, I'm sure that you're vaccinated. So you only have to do 5 days, right? That's not too bad. Hi, Miss Carla. Was that who sung that song, Third Eye Blind? I don't even remember. Like I said, even 1997 seems like a lifetime away. It really, really does. Oh my goodness, so much has changed since then. Omeria, pleasant good morning to you. Yes, we got CUC joining us. Vernita, good morning, Megan. Alvin is here. I know. Alvin's like, try to sort out your tongue. Thank you so much. I'm my apologies for butchering the good professor's name. I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna get it right. Vernita, good morning. Now you guys know I had some dental work done a couple weeks ago now. Is it a couple weeks already or is it a week? Tuesday was a week. The time just flies. I'm like, was Tuesday a week or 2 weeks? Anyway, time legit just flies. And so after that procedure, you may not have really noticed or recognized this, but I do have almost like a retainer in my mouth, right? You don't really see it because it's like inside, but it does impact my speech because it impacts the placement of my tongue. So it's irritating me a little bit over the last couple of days. So I'm going to go to the dentist on Monday, but pronouncing words, like I don't know if you've noticed me doing this, but I have to accentuate a bit more because I'm compensating for a foreign object being in my mouth. So you guys know if you've ever worn braces, how that changes your speech, especially when they're on or when you get them tightened. And then when you have to wear your retainer afterwards, thank God, that's why most of us only have to wear retainers at night. But if you have anything in your mouth, you always have to kind of compensate for it. Omeria says, I think Miss Ina Connor from East End might be the oldest. She's 103, if my memory serves me correctly. I think we need to find that out. Because, yeah, we need to make sure we go and say hi to her. He says, that's great. Thank you. My Mandan family initiated trouble with my name too. Aw. Yes. Mandan, he's been here 20 years. Yes, Miss Mitzi, Miss Alice is here. Good morning, Miss Darlene, joining us from the UK. Hi, Judy. Only 5 days, so she's out on Monday. Yay. Richard shares my birthday. Wow, August 18th. Ooh, is her birthday on a Sunday this year? No, it's on Wednesday. Where did you get Sunday from? Am I looking at the right? Yes, it is August 18th. That's a Wednesday this year, Richard. Do you ever go back and see what day of the week you were actually born? Isn't that interesting that you can just pull that up in a calendar? Anybody ever was curious, like, what day was I born? So Richard celebrates a birthday with me. Happy birthday, Richard. Lots of August babies. My daughter's the 9th, which is this coming Monday. And who else is on my? David Dixon shares a birthday with me as well on the 18th. Tina Trumbach shares a birthday with my daughter. Who else shares a birthday with her? I've got a few people that share birthday with me. So super awesome. So this morning, I think I can kind of tell you this surprise. Let me just double check. I'm still going to go say David this morning. And then if he confirms, I'm going to tell you. Because you got to log back in. I'm going to be doing a live stream, a pop-up on location. You know, I got to make sure because it's a surprise for me. And so I want you guys to come in and join me on the surprise as well. Vernita says, Sandy, as you get older, you will reminisce even more. It keeps me alive. I guess that's what memories are for, right? Buenos dias, Miss Alba. Yeah, I think memories play an important role in who we are, and it helps us to, I think, grow as individuals as well, because obviously where I was at 18, I'm no longer there in my 40s, but, you know, there's so many phases of our lives that we go through, and I think when I was 18, for me, transitioning as a young adult, university life, and all this kind of stuff, it was I don't know if I want to say it was my most difficult period, but it could have been. It was pretty challenging for a number of different reasons. So I was in university, but I didn't have, in many respects, what I thought was traditional university life. Like I didn't have parents footing the bill. I wasn't on a full scholarship. So I legit had to hustle. But I think that's probably the story of a lot of other people. Like it might not have really been all that unique. But, you know, I was a hustler trying to get that piece of paper. That's why I look at kids now who have the opportunity to be like fully funded with government scholarships, and they don't take up that opportunity or they waste it. And I'm like, what is wrong with you? Oh my God, what I would have done to not have to worry about where tuition money was coming from. And not just tuition money, but like the next meal, you know? And there's so many people, I reflect back on that time, and I'm really, really thankful for the good people that were placed in my life who were always there at the right moment. Like people seem to come into your life, even if it's for a season, to just help you, and then you transition and go your separate ways. So I've been thinking about some of those people recently. Good morning to Evelyn. She says, happy Independence Day. Yes. Big up to all of our Jamaican friends and family. Today is Jamaican Independence Day. So I am sure that we'll be having something up on the website. Renee is on top of those things. So where's the party at? We need to go by and check out the party. Normally, like Mango Tree, I think does something. So is there like an official spot today? Carrie Ann, good morning. Carrie Ann wants to know if a parent is vaccinated and the child is not, do we have to quarantine? Yes, is the short answer. You were born on a Sunday, but I think I was born on a Saturday. So I believe, Richard, that means that we were born in different years, basically. Sounds like you might be the year. Would that be before or after? I'm the worst with numbers, I think. The year before me. No, after. Send me your year of birth. You don't have to post it here, but. So Irvin's daughter is the 19th. Oh, lots of August babies. Oh, yes, Corrine also shares a birthday with Gianna. Anne Marie says she has 2 kids in August. Wow. Julie's birthday is the 11th. Happy birthday. And her mom is the 18th. You guys are just about as close as, a little bit closer. 1 week apart exactly. Gianna and I are a week and 2 days apart. Good morning, Richard. How are you? Alice, is anyone having trouble signing up with Works? It won't accept my email address and saying must be unique. Oh, Lord. Listen to me, y'all. Seriously? Let's talk about the press briefing. So yesterday morning, I told you guys I was running off to this press briefing. And it was a little bit, my apologies as I get my back scratcher. They come in all colors, by the way. This is a black one. So, you know, I was keen. I know the minister definitely wanted CMR to be there. I feel like they really appreciate that if you're trying to get the word out to the people, CMR is the way to go. So, of course, we wanted to be there as well. Now that we get invited to these events, it's definitely a responsibility to go there and ask questions on behalf of the people. So you guys always send me your questions, and sometimes I come up with questions of my own. So I was sitting there. Speaking of Works, one of my questions was in relation to Works and how poorly Works seem to not work. You go figure that one out, but it really doesn't work that well. So I said, listen, this is great that you are requiring stipend recipients. Mandatory requirement now, folks. If you missed the press briefing yesterday, it was specific to just the Department of Tourism and the ministry. So it was just the Minister of Tourism. A lot of people thought he did a great job, and they were very, very pleased with the information. But listen, my first question was, this is fantastic. I think mandatory, registration is a requirement, or should be a requirement as well. But when the system doesn't work, to your point, Alice, when it doesn't work, it just frustrates everyone. So I'm like, listen, can we at least hear some positive moves in that direction? Because quite frankly, it hasn't worked from the day it launched. I mean, it's always up and down. You can't log in. People have issues with logging in. It is just a source of legit frustration. So can we get work to work? So there was that question about the technical side of things, because it's great to have all these fancy websites and email addresses up and whatever, but when it doesn't work as intended, and not only does it not work as intended, but even if you can get past the registration stage, I'm understanding it's actually very difficult to navigate. You know that when you put up a website, it's oftentimes a very good idea to have people test it. Now, here's the thing. You guys know that my bachelor's degree is in what's called professional and technical writing. And what a lot of technical writers do is they actually write manuals, believe it or not. You can do a lot of things with a technical writing degree, but a lot of them write manuals. And so they take what could be a very complex issue and they try to break it down where you can understand it. That's what they need with this website. They need a non-technical person, or maybe someone who's technically trained to a certain level, to review this website and come back with feedback on how to fix it, how to make it more user-friendly. Because it defeats the purpose of people getting frustrated by the website, because then they're not going to use the website. So that was my first question in relation to that. And the minister did say that the other minister responsible for that, which would be the Deputy Premier Chris Saunders, is aware of the complaints and that it's being worked on. Well, I sure hope worked on can be fixed really, really quickly. And I don't know who they use to build these websites, but They don't have a clue how to make it user-friendly. And that's a problem. So Richard says, yes, it's confusing. Morning, Miss Bonnie. Miss Lorna. Someone says they need a business analyst like them to review it. Anything, please. And the other question then was, in terms of placement, the staff, the employees at Works always, I mean, they try. I'm not trying to say that they don't try, but a lot of times they themselves don't get it. They don't know how to take somebody's skill sets. This is another skill, being a headhunter and knowing what someone, where's my water, by the way, today? Did I forget my water outside? Oh gosh, I'll have to go get it. So they don't understand how to take a specific skill set and then match that with what an employer is looking for. There are some skill sets that are translated or what's the word I'm looking for? They're transferable, right? So communication skills, they kind of can transfer into any profession really. But at the end of the day, you have got to ensure that you understand what's required for a position and what individuals can fill that position. So here's an example. This lady's over 50. She was a taxi cab driver. She's getting the stipend. She's already registered with Works. And they sent her job offer for a steel tying, to tie steel on a construction site. She's like, I don't even know what that means. Why would you? I'm sorry, but a taxi driver, you're asking them to tie steel? What the heck is that? How is she supposed to know how to tie steel? Is this like a mentorship position? Oh my gosh. Dr. Lokoi, that's not politically correct word, but he says the first time I went and Works, I thought, you see the word he used, we'll say that he thought he was the one who was challenged. And it's not that individuals are challenged, it's that the website just doesn't work all that well. Bonnie has a daughter for August the 9th or August 8th. So that's on Sunday. Nice. Good morning, Miss Beulah. Corrine, yes. Jamaica Independence Day. They're having food and stuff out by Cardinal Alvey. Okay, well, we will go out there. We're going to go check it out. Gospel concert at the airport. Yes, Jonathan, $100,000. I'll even take the land, but to be honest, I'd probably rather have the money because I don't know where the land is. That might be swampland. Hopefully they picked a decent piece, but I legit would take the $100,000. Okay, so let's do a quick commercial break. I see our first guest is getting ready. I'm just going to take a quick break because I need to find my water. So let's get a little sponsorship message in here from our friends over at Miracle Brokers.
Miracle Brokers International is Cayman's premier source for all your packing, moving, and logistics needs. Whether it's moving a baby grand piano for a concert or moving halfway around the world, we have you covered with our team of local and international experts. MBI has over 30 years of industry experience and are able to get the job done for you right the first time. Contact us today for all your packing, moving, shipping, and logistics needs at 949-5989 or email info@miraclebrokers.com.
Filters allowed, real information, no filters allowed. Judge number one is showing the island today. Galilee truth, no filters allowed. Real information, no filters allowed. Judge number one is showing the island today.
All right, folks, welcome back. Welcome back. Good morning to everyone. How are you guys doing? All right, so we do have the honor of having the good professor in studio with us. We're going to go ahead and bring him in now. So thank you guys so much for your messages. We'll get back to some open mic topics a little bit later on. But we have 2 guests lined up for today. Thank you, Ms. Brenda, for mentioning. That the Jamaican men and women are running shortly in the 4x100 relay. Ooh, they could very well take gold, especially the women. Nice. That would be awesome. Yeah, they've been doing really well. Did you guys see the joke about the Aki, about the Jamaican runners and the Aki? I'm going to pull that up for you guys. I'll share it a little bit later on because it is hilarious. I was telling my husband about it this morning. As you guys know, he's from Jamaica. And he was kind of like shaking his head. He's like, where do people get these jokes from? I'm like, listen, I don't know, but it is kind of funny. So we will have a look at that a bit later on. So yes, happy Jamaican Independence Day. One thing I've noticed with the Olympics before we start talking about economics is, do you guys know that, or you recognize obviously, that Jamaica seems to do really, really well in short distance running. Now, I don't know why that is, but they kill it. They've been killing it for a minute now with the short distance runners. So whether that's Bolt, who has set a number of records, stick a pin. One of his records was actually broken yesterday. Did you guys hear that? I was like, whoa, that's kind of a big deal. But records are made to be broken as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, go get them. Keep running. So they're really, really well at short distance running, but the long distance runners, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've actually never heard of a Jamaican long distance runner. Like there's sprinters. But the long distance runners seem to come from a lot of African countries, Kenya. I was watching a race this morning. I can't remember what the distance was, but it was one of those long distance races for sure. And boy, they were booking it. I was like, they really can produce per capita. The vast majority of long distance runners actually come out of some part of Africa. It's amazing. Wendy says it took her an hour to register as a person. Lord Jesus. Miranda is of the opinion that works is a waste of money. Darlene said to call Alexa to get the water for me. I wish she could deliver things like that, but she's not quite that handy. I had to go find the water because I couldn't remember where I put it. I knew I had it already. So then I ran to the water cooler. It wasn't there. I looked in the kitchen. It wasn't. I had to run to 3 different locations during that commercial break to find it. Buenos dias, Elizabeth. Deslan is here. Janita is here. Miranda. All right, folks, we've got 238 people on the live stream right now between Facebook and YouTube. Emma's excited about the lottery. Yes, Miranda, whatever it takes. All over the world, they're trying to incentivize people. So let's get it. You're welcome, Alice, about the works info. And thank you for sharing that. I need to go back to, there's certain things in studio that I can't actually click on. So let me go and see if I can grab it from Facebook. Is that the answer for why the secret of Jamaica's runners? Oh, this looks interesting. This was in the New York Times. Yeah, they go way back. This is quite an interesting article. Thank you so much for sharing that. We'll review that later on. We got time for that. Alice says, yeah, they run fast because they got to run from bullets of light. Oh my gosh, behave yourself. Morning, Jake. How are you? Haven't seen Jake in a minute. Gone up to 260 people. All right, let's get it. Professor Mobarak. Mobarak sounds about right. I'm sorry that I am butchering your name this morning.
No problem at all. As I mentioned, my Caymanian family has been butchering my name for 25 years. So it's a hard one.
Thank you so much for joining the program this morning. First of all, your credentials read like a who's who of the academic world. So just to let you guys know, he is a professor of economics at Yale University. He's also the founder and faculty director of the Yale Research Initiative on Innovation and Scale. Wow. currently advising several governments on evidence-based COVID response policies. I sure hope the QAnon's government is one of those, but we'll talk about it. And he, along with a large team, are in the middle of distributing face masks to over 100 million people in 5 countries. Wow. Some mask promotion programs based on his research on how to ensure consistent mask wearing during the pandemic. And he's married to Kimanian for over 25 years, has 2 children. And although he's based at Yale, he spends about 4 months on the island. Well, he's been here since December, working on a variety of economic issues. So do you spend a lot of your time still at Yale and then kind of come back and forth every once in a while?
Exactly. Yeah. So my home base is Yale, which is in Connecticut between Boston and New York. But a lot of my work is in other countries. I'm a development economist, so I work with countries in Africa and Asia mostly. But during the pandemic, I haven't been able to travel to those countries. So I'm spending more and more time in Cayman, which is a place I really love and care for.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we've been relatively COVID-free, so you can move around with ease. So that's so interesting. So economics and development, I mean, seems to me like they go hand in hand. And have you been studying the Cayman economy and our historical, you know, well, some people say we don't have a development plan, but even if you don't technically have a plan and you're just making it happen, it becomes, you know, a very ad hoc plan. But what are some of your observations about what you see about the Cayman economy overall?
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, first of all, I think you already hit upon one issue, which is, you know, more planning, more integrated planning. You know, thinking about the future, that would be a good direction for the country to go. Yeah, and you know what? Maybe I should just say a little bit about my connection to the island. Why is it that a Yale professor is here and talking about all of this? So, you know, I love the place. I've been married to a Caymanian for over 25 years. My children are Caymanian, and so I care about the future of the place. And, you know, the reason I really wanted to, Sandy, thanks very much for having me here, because the reason I really wanted to come on your show is that you have the ears of a lot of ordinary Caymanians, you know, you have the finger on the pulse of a segment of the population, you and your listeners, that I really do need to connect to, and we need to, you know, give voice to and hear them out. For us to, you know, figure out how to have more inclusive development on the island, right? And that's something that's been missing. And before I start, you know, spouting off about what I think about the island, right? I'll just say, look, I might be misguided. I may not know things as well as you and your listeners do, right? But the one thing that I will not see is that I care deeply about the place. So I just want to get the conversation started, right? And I think economics, economic theory, data, these have a lot to contribute for us to, you know, think about how to pursue development strategies. And so that's the skill set that I can bring to bear in conversation with others to figure out, you know, what's the right path for the country. Right? So, okay, so now,
thank you.
Yeah, so now, you know, what is it that's been happening? The main reason I wanted to, you know, come and talk to you today to get the conversation started is that I have become increasingly worried about the place and the direction it's been taking, right? Because I have had the opportunity to observe for over 25 years, and one value of sort of seeing the place like once a year, you know, like I have, because we always come for Christmas, New Year's, etc. And this year I've been here for spend 4 more months on the island. Is that like then you can see the discrete changes that happen, right? Whereas when you're living through it, sometimes it's like a frog in boiling water. Like things are changing, but it's hard to notice because it's changing tiny bit every day, right? Whereas when you get these like snapshots once every 1 or 2 years, you know, it's something that becomes a little bit more obvious. Like so recently, you shared videos about what was happening on 7 Mile Beach, the loss of the beach, right? So suddenly you see a big change that there was a beach, now there isn't, and people notice. But of course, that didn't happen overnight, right? That was happening gradually, like inch here and an inch there that was being lost, right? And we just somehow didn't notice, right? So, okay, so now, you know, what am I, why is it that I said I'm worried, right? You know, so actually I would love for your listeners to introspect, right? And hear their comments, which is, think back to your life in like 1995 or 2000. I'm picking 1995 because that's around the time that I got married, right? And that's when I started coming to the island, right? So, like, is it easier for you to find affordable housing within a reasonable distance of your workplace today than it was 20 years ago, right? Has your wages kept pace with the increases in the cost of living, right? Do you feel less stressed today than you did back then, or is it the other way around, right? Like, how long does it take you to get to work today than it did like 20 years ago? Okay. And overall, do you feel like your quality of life is better today than it was 20 years ago? Right? I think those are the questions we need to start asking ourselves, because it doesn't have to be like that, right? If your answer to those questions are negative, right, it's not that it's just happening to us. There's a set of conscious policies being pursued, strategies being pursued, that makes it the way it is. And we need to start having conversations about those things.
Well, thank you so much for sort of giving the reason behind why you're here and why this discussion is important, because I think when people hear, oh my gosh, we're going to have a professor from Yale University, it sounds a bit overwhelming, perhaps to the average person, but smart people get the importance of planning, of economics as a country, as individuals, even making sure that we're managing our resources properly. And, sometimes we don't always have the expertise to be able to do it on our own. So that's why we rely on people such as yourself, who have, had not just the academic training, but practical aspects of working in different countries and with different governments and world economies and so forth. So it's interesting that you bring up the stark contrast of how things were maybe even 25 years ago. Like I was saying earlier in the show, lately I've been like reminiscing a little bit about, my early adulthood and university years. And it's just amazing how much we as people change in 25, 30 years, but the things around us change, countries change, neighborhoods change. I mean, there's just so much that goes on. And of course, one of the key elements of this change is that we hope that it's benefiting the average person, and that there's some level of sustainability that's actually occurring as a result of the change. Because change is going to happen no matter what. And it can obviously be negative, positive. And sometimes we think that change is kind of a bit indifferent, although I think there's always some level of an impact that happens. So those were some pertinent questions that you were just asking about the quality of our lives, even the quality of our environment. We've seen the stark environmental change on the 7 Mile Beach corridor that I think was really shocking to a lot of people. And like you said, it didn't happen overnight. And, Professor, as you were saying that, I was kind of thinking to myself, even in terms of what we see with the spate of criminal activity, right? So lately, a couple of weeks ago, we had last month 2 mass shootings. And I got to tell you, never in a million years. I came back to Cayman in 1996. I think it was late 1996. I never thought that I would ever hear of a mass shooting in the Cayman Islands. Like, it just didn't even enter my thought process. But here we are, not just having 1, but having 2 in the space of such a short space of time. So change is happening around us, whether we like it or not, and it's not always the best sort of change. But when it comes to economic change, what are some of the things that we, as a country, a government, and even on the individual level, what can we do to prepare ourselves, to buffer ourselves against any, become more resilient against any of the negative things that could be coming our way? Like this pandemic, none of us saw this coming either. Right. Although we probably should have. Like, people hadn't warned it. The professionals had been saying, hey, major pandemic is coming, and we were just, had our head in the clouds.
Yeah, well, that was true for much of the world. That's not unfortunately not a Cayman specific problem. Like, everybody had their head in the sun. So let me respond to several of the points you raised. So one is, thank you. Yes, I do have some expertise in economics that might be helpful, but I want to add that, that's not the only thing that's needed. The other thing that you need is passion and care, right? Which a lot of your listeners have. And you also need local knowledge, right? Which a lot of your listeners have. And you have to bring all of these things together and people together in order to devise good policies, right? And you have a role to play, Sandy. I mean, now that you have this important podium, right? Where so many people listen to you. You have over 250 listeners right now, right? That you can also play an important role in bringing people together, and so at least have a discussion. Not everybody's going to agree on everything, but we need to have planning discussions. Yeah? Okay, so now about like what's happening on the economic side. Okay, so let me kind of, since this is the first conversation, I want us to talk about big picture issues today, right?
Okay.
And hopefully over time, what I'm doing, like while I'm on the island, I've been trying to collect data, that can help us sort of bring more of a quantitative picture on the problems that we're seeing, right? And also use economic theory. So I'm going to try and tell you about like what the theory tells you, and then hopefully in future years we can talk about or future episodes we can talk about like details that the data teaches, right?
Right. Okay.
So now whenever we start talking about what type of development is happening, is this really good for the island or not, right? Then that maybe there's overdevelopment, etc. Like one rejoinder we hear from the other side is that, you know what, Cayman used to be a mosquito-infested backward place, and it's all the development that got us out of there, right? Why should we stop that? Okay. Now the problem is that, look, I've been here for 25 years. I know what it was like in 1995. No, it was not a mosquito-infested backward place. You can't use that like scare tactic, right, to suggest that like this is the only path that you got to keep developing in the same, following the same path that's been following. So for example, you might think that there is like some development that's of course necessary to bring people out of poverty, right? And my Caymanian family has come out of, thanks to some smart policy, some opportunities created where the government played a hand, other actors played a hand. Like many of them were able to escape that poverty, right? But there might be an optimum. It's not like you just keep shooting. There might be an optimum beyond which more property development, right? It may not actually be good for the country. It may actually leave ordinary Caymanians behind and make their lives harder, right? So I'm currently worried that we are at or past that inflection point. Okay. And okay, so how does this show up, right? So if you start pursuing these policies of development, more and more property development, right? And and then there's a phrase that you hear here often that who are we developing for, right?
Right.
If it's so, that is changing the identity of the place, the nature of the place, what made Cayman, what attracted those tourists to come here, right? But what also attracted the local population to have community, to practice Cayman kind, etc. And it seems like the nature and identity are changing pretty fast suddenly. And that might, and then when you were talking about crime, right? That's not an accident, right? That's kind of related to those changes, because if the nature and identity of a place has changed, you start seeing new phenomenon like this, like shootings and crime, right? I'm not trying to create a direct connection here, but it's also not that surprising, right? And so so let's talk about crime. Where does crime come from? It comes from what the criminology literature teaches us is one of the main drivers of crime is inequality, right? And there has been massive increases in inequality, right? So we are talking about like middle-class Caymanians' lives, as I said at the outset, it's getting worse, because what happens is, as soon as you compare your wages, think about growth on your wages, your salary, right? And think about growth in the cost of living. If the cost of living growth looks like this and salaries are like that, right, then you're getting poorer. It doesn't matter if you have a bit more money in your bank account, you're actually getting poorer because because you're having to spend more. So like if I were to express that salary in terms of, okay, what can you afford with that? Like, can you afford a 2-bedroom place, right? Then it tells you that over time we can afford less and less with it. So we're actually it's getting worse. And then when ordinary Caymanians' lives is getting worse, inequality is rising. And if inequality rises, right, then you have associated problems like crime.
Right. Yes, I mean, feel free to expound
Yeah,
on that a little
sure. I
bit.
can.
So let me let's read a few comments. So Eden is here, Eden Hurlson watching, and he says that you actually are very good at Go Fish. So, he also says that he got to go back home to Cayman 20 years ago when he came back, and he felt the opportunity. He had the opportunity to do positive work, build a home and prosper. And now, as he looks at his son, he wonders what opportunities he will have in 20 years, and that it breaks his heart and it feels exhausting to feel like you fight all the time, just for common sense to have a place in her plan.
Yeah.
Eden, we'll talk about that lack of common sense element a little bit later on. But there's, I think, a quote in the Bible that says, "For lack of knowledge, the people will perish," or something to that effect. I might not be saying it precisely, but pretty much, it speaks to the fact that it's important for us to understand what is happening around us in our environment, and to ensure that we understand, that's data collection, and we have to understand what's happening and then put it together in terms of the why. And so the professor was just speaking about some of the contributors to changing the way of life for people here in the Cayman Islands that isn't necessarily positive. So there is that economic impact that has a knock-on effect on other things. So Miss Lorna, thank you so much for watching. She says, very interesting. Anne says, a voice that we need, educated and thoughtful. Our government needs to take heed. But we're here today to learn from you, Professor. So
yeah, I
when you
share
talk
some of the
about this
concerns.
growing marginalization of what I would call the middle class, right?
Yeah.
If we look at historical data from all over the world, we've seen that marginalization of the middle class has never worked out well for any country in the world. Like, I've never seen it where it was like, oh, this is a success story of when you marginalize economically the middle class and you make it harder for them to attain, land ownership, property ownership, sustainable jobs, and all these other things. That this has been something that we wish to promote because it works. It's a pancreas for success. That isn't the message that we get from what we've seen happen elsewhere. Can you think, I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but just from your own research and experience, some of the perhaps most stark examples of that contrast of where a country hasn't prioritized the development of their middle class, and it has led to some real social and economic issues?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there are just so many examples to choose from. It turns out, unfortunately, to be an easy question, just because there's so much of this, right? And so let me actually connect Cayman to this, because what I want to tell you about is that, look, it's not that hard for us to visualize where we're headed, because we have bad examples of where countries have headed with that, right? And we know what that looks like. And so let me, maybe while we're living in it, it's sometimes hard for us to notice. So I'm going to try and paint that picture of what I think is happening, right? But first, let me say, with Eden and others, I share their concerns about our children. My nephews and nieces are trying to make a living in the Cayman Islands. My children may at some point want to move here, but given the direction it's headed, with Eden's concern, same thing. I don't know if this is going to be the future for Caymanians who are trying to make a living. So okay, so what's going on? So let me, what I want to say is that, look, with this conversation started, we can, it's good that we start talking to each other, because we are all, something I hear constantly from Caymanians within my family, outside my family, is that, oh, life is hard, life is getting hard, right? It's stressful. I'm having trouble paying my CUC bills, which I'm sure we'll talk more about today, right? I'm having trouble finding affordable housing, finding place to live such that I don't have to spend an hour commuting in from Prospect or from Bordentown now, right? And the awakening that needs to happen is that a lot of what I hear is that people are complaining, and there's a lot of common threads in those complaints, so we can actually identify what the issues are in terms of how it affects people's lives, right? But the connection that's not being made as much as it should is that, oh, there's a set of policies in place that's actually making life harder. It's not just happening to us. It's not something that is automatic, right? It is something that is conscious, right? And it is something that is relevant to policy choices, right? Like we can actually change the trajectory if we were to put our minds to it, right? Put our heads together. So that's why I want that type of an awakening to happen among all of us, right? So that we can start thinking about, okay, what policies do we need to change in order to fix this, so that we don't just continue on this trajectory where our life is getting harder, right?
And that's let me just pause you for 1 second there. So let me just break it down for anyone who may have missed what you just said. Policies are driven 99% of the time by what our government is doing. They set the policy, they set the pace for this race that we're all in. So we do have the Honorable Kenneth Bryan, who's listening this morning. He says that he's loving this data-driven discussion. Ms. Darlene from the UK, she's a Caymanan who had to, sort of rehome herself to the UK because, she falls within this group that unfortunately was being marginalized here. She has a disability. She's still very much functional. She wants to work. She wants to live her life. But she's also at that retirement age, so she doesn't quite have as much disposable income. So it's actually easier for her to move to another country like the UK, to try to just, have a better quality of life. But because the minister's here, I'm hoping that other government officials are also perhaps silently listening to the program. But their policy, the decisions that they make, has a trickle-down effect and impacts our lives. So the professor just said, the things that are happening to us aren't just happening to us, but they're happening directly because of decisions that are being made. And it's a plan, whether it's a well thought out plan or not. Someone obviously has a vision for this country, or they think they have a vision, they have a plan, and they are executing policy decisions that impact every aspect of our lives. So whether it's things that drive, like giving CUC, for example, a contract that is extremely favorable to them, guaranteeing them a profit all the time, that was a policy decision. That was a contract decision that now has an impact on all of us. Things, for example, we're just trying to break it down to a practical level. Alexa, volume down. Sorry. Even doing things like, breaking up the monopoly in telecom. That has had an impact on our lives. That has driven innovation to a certain extent. It's driven down the cost of telecom here in the Cayman Islands. So the policy decisions, you might look at it and you might think, oh, well, that's not a big deal that the government is deciding to do this, spending millions of dollars on a school that isn't entirely functional. Every single thing the government does, I think, eventually has I feel like it's pretty immediate in this country because we are such a small economy that we don't have the buffers of having to wait 15, 20, 25 years to even feel the impact. Sometimes it feels like it's almost instantaneous. So I just want to make sure that you guys understood very clearly what the professor just said, that everything has this knock-on effect and it's all being driven by policy. So that then means that a lot of our solutions must come at that policy developmental level as well.
Yeah. And so what I'd like to do next is maybe we can go into the specifics of a few of the policies, right? Like I don't, we're not going to be able to solve all our problems in the next 20, 30 minutes. And so instead I can just start touching on several policies so people can start thinking about them. And then maybe in the future, we can have more in-depth discussions, right? So, but before I do that, I should just say, since you mentioned the government minister, is one reason a lot of these connections got made, where I got to learn a lot from other experts on the island who are working on these issues for many years, is that there's this Roy Botton symposium that was held in June, right? And I know Honorable Ms. Bernie Bush was a key actor who put that together. And I think it's really important for the country to continue those types of symposia and events, to have smart conversations about things so that people with different types of expertise can come together, right?
Yes.
And this cannot be a once in a decade event. This has to be like at least a once a year type event. Okay, so now, so now let's think about some policies. Okay, I'm gonna just touch on a few. I might start a few fires, right? But but if you want, okay, I'll come back and talk in more depth later.
Okay.
So here's the thing. Okay, Cayman likes to talk about how it's an income tax. There's no taxes here, right? Right. Now it turns out there's no free lunch. You have taxes. It's just too easy to say I don't have taxes because there's no taxes here. Obviously you have taxes because the government budget has to balance, right? And so how does the government budget balance? So you don't have income taxes. So then you charge what I would characterize as consumption taxes, like all the duties that you pay, right? So every time you buy milk over here or diapers or what have you, right? Like whatever that regular people buy, right? It's more expensive. I mean, partly it's more expensive because we're an island, but it's also more expensive because there are duties charged on those things, right? And it's not just about, by the way, it's not just about exemption for this, exemption for that. Ultimately, the government needs revenues. And if you pursue a policy of consumption taxes, you're going to collect revenues from people consuming things, right? So now if you understand that logic, now think about what happens with the rest of the world with income taxes, right? So taxation systems are generally progressive. Like as you get richer, you pay a larger share of your income, right? Which is a fair way to do things. Richer people should be paying more, right? Because a lot of what makes us rich or poor is by our accident of birth, right? So, however, in Cayman, when you pursue a policy of consumption taxes, what's happening is the only way that a rich person would pay more in taxes than a poor person is let's say you're a billionaire versus an ordinary Caymanian is earning whatever they earn, right? Only if the billionaire buys 1 million times more milk than the ordinary Caymanian would they be paying more in taxes, right? So, but that obviously doesn't happen. So when you're taxing all these all sorts of consumption, of course, poorer people spend a much larger share of their income in basic consumption, right? And so when you tax those things, then what happens is poorer people are paying a larger share of their income in taxes, right? So what's embarrassing about the situation here is that we are all these government services we're talking about, right? It's not too unfair to characterize this as on the backs of poor people rather than the rich people who are getting a holiday. So that's a policy, look, maybe that's a policy that's impossible to change, hard to change. I'm not getting into that right now, right? I don't think it's impossible to change, but it's a choice we're making. And we can't just go around saying, oh, look, it's so hard. Life is so expensive. Life is expensive because your consumption is being taxed, right? Rather than richer people's income is being taxed. Okay. Let me give you another example of housing getting expensive. Okay. So the fact that there's instead of property taxes, an annual flow that you get, right? So you pay a one-time stamp duty. So what that leads to is that now, the people who have property on 7 Mile Beach, right? So they're a lot of it is speculative investment. If you talk to real estate agents, right? I can't ask these questions anymore, but somebody else can, and say that what types of inquiries do you get? You see there are inquiries of people who are living in the US, Canada, or Europe who are saying, oh, I just want to buy a $2 million property, sight unseen, right? Now, if you don't pay property taxes, what happens is people can make speculative investments. So they sit on property where that is not being used by locals, right? And the property prices keep going up. So it's an investment that pays off for them. But as that investment is paying off for them, there's no flow of fees, services, taxes, property taxes that's flowing to the government that's used to maintain the streets around this place, right?
Right.
So that's another decision you're making. There's no property taxes. Great, there's no property taxes. Guess what? That affects all of our lives, right? Not that I'm not saying that, it's going to be easy for us to change it, right?
Yes.
But we should be thinking about these things in a rational way, right?
Yeah. Let me just pause you for a second there, Professor, because I hadn't really thought about it. I mean, I've actually, I've lived in the States. I grew up there, and I went to university there. And my aunt always used to say this to me, and you just put it in context at a very different level. But she would always say to me, you walk on the sidewalk, you're paying for that privilege, because it took money to build that sidewalk. If you throw a piece of garbage, somebody's got to go up behind you and pick that garbage up. And there's always, as you rightfully said, and I always say that on this program, there's nothing in life really that's free. It comes with either direct or indirect cost. But at the end of the day, the point that you've just made, even as it relates to property taxes, because I know, in the US, obviously they pay property taxes. At some level, Sometimes they actually pay depending on what state you live in. So some states like California has both a state tax and then you have to pay your federal tax from an income tax perspective. So there's multiple layers of taxation in the US. But when you were talking about the fact that someone can actually purchase property and never, as long as they hold a title and they don't transfer the title, there's never any revenue that government will derive from that ever again, is really driving the point home. Because you know, I don't know what the average time of home ownership is, but again, this is all, I suppose, empirical data that we could research and we could get some information on, because it would certainly give us some insights, right? But if the average person in Cayman holds on to home for 25, 30, 40 years, that property just sits there for that entire time without any government revenue. And that government revenue is used for all sorts of programs, including social programs, and to alleviate at some level the cost of living on everybody in the community as well. You know, Mr. Mickey, which I think, by the way, Eden is your dad. I've only recently learned that, so I still have to process that in my head. But he always, I mean, he's like, sometimes I say he's a broken record because he says the same thing every single time, but he drives home the message that this concept of living in a quote unquote tax-free environment is one that we should really think carefully about, because it doesn't seem to be a model that has worked well. And as you say, the taxes that we do pay, the import duties and those sorts of things, impact everyone from the very poorest of the poor to the richest of the rich. But maybe there has to be some sort of layering of how we look at a tax scheme if one was to be introduced. So, you know, those multi-million-dollar condos that people are purchasing and sitting on, maybe it's time to think about taxing those at a small percentage per annum. Now, listen, your conversation is so incredibly interesting this morning. I do know that we have Sasha from CUC, Sasha Tibbetts. He's the vice president of customer service and technology, I believe, at CUC. So he's going to be joining us here in a little bit. And we're going to have the Minister of Tourism, Kenneth Bryan, is listening, and he wanted to jump into the conversation as well. So let me just read a few comments, and then Minister will bring you in, and then Professor will continue to engage with you as well. But Anne says, agreed. I think one of the most frustrating things is for us as Caymanians is to know that it can be fixed via policy, but haven't been. It's very vexing. Eden says we have construction facilitation instead of a development plan. We need policy that supports people instead of just guaranteeing profits. Claudia is listening from DC. Thank you so much, Claudia. Good morning. She says, interesting topic and discussion this morning. In addition to concern for my grandchildren, I'm concerned about the generation who are reaching retirement age and how they are to survive. Pension, if any, is just a pittance and no longer group health insurance, etc. I feel we have some serious social issues. Good morning to Pilar. Good morning, David. Christopher's joining us. I think Christopher's in New York. Aliano says economic gratification, income inequality, and poor labor laws. I would like to hear a lot more on how our economy is affected by those. So not to worry, we'll get to those. Pilar says helping Caymanians understand the links between economic policies and social incomes has been absent. Well, guess what? We had the conversation today, folks. Ms. Brenda, thank you so much. She says that this is an education I've gotten for free. As you all know, my brother is an excellent economist who made left. Hold on, I think I'm missing something. A word here. Who made left his footprints in the sand. Too bad his expertise has been ignored. That's a whole other discussion, I think, about ignoring our human capital that we have that's readily available to us. Julie's asking if I could remind you to give us examples of countries that have gotten it wrong because of economic policy or just policy decisions in general that trickle down. So good morning, Eden again. Yes, sir. Professor, just going back to the question, I think Julie.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
A
so
direct response.
Okay, so it's yeah. I will give you thank you for the reminder, right? And I'm going to paint that picture now. And I think it's just that there's so much to talk about. I keep getting distracted on new tangents. So yeah, so let me now talk about you. You just Sandy, you just like connected the taxes and the economic policies to the way it affects our lives, right? Now let's now talk about some knock-on effects of that, which will allow me to talk about these other examples. Okay, so what's a knock-on effect? So now, if you're not getting a steady flow of property taxes, right? So it turns out the road doesn't care that this property has not been transacted for the last 20 years, right? The road needs to be repaved, right? So that's the problem with this policy, which is like you have a flow of expenditures, right, which isn't matching with when the revenues might come in, because that depends on when the seller wants to sell, right? Which happens much more infrequently, right? So now you need to get those revenues. Okay, so what do you do to get those revenues? So that puts pressure, and I understand where the government might have come from, why they chose to pursue the policies they did, which is it puts pressure on more and more development, which is like, because I know that if I allow another development, that's going to create some business, that's going to create some fees for me, right? That's going to create some stamp duties for me, right? And I need that to balance the budget, right? And that is what's changing the nature and identity of the place as well, right? Because we are under pressure to develop because we need to get those revenues, because otherwise the bills don't get paid, right? The government bills don't get paid, right? Whether it's educational spending or health spending or what have you, they need to be paid. Okay, so then you just keep putting pressure on more and more property development, right? And then that changes, so when you put pressure on property development and it's high-end property, like which is not being developed for Caymanians, they're being pushed out. So people, the families I know who for generations grew up in West Bay, they can no longer afford to live there, right? So they're being pushed out. So in the first wave, I saw people going to Prospect, then I saw people going to Savannah, now further to Bordentown, right? And now they're spending an hour getting into town to work, right? So when we were talking about, earlier we were talking about the nature and the identity of the place changing, right? Cayman used to look very different. We used to come here and it looked like an island. It felt like an island, right? And that itself was economically meaningful as well, because that attracted tourists, high-end tourists who would want to come spend time here because they felt like, look, we have beautiful stuff just off the coast. You can do shore dives that get you some of the most beautiful, like I do that all the time, and it gets you to some of the most beautiful things that you can see on Earth, right? Like a whole different planet down there. Like and then you have this island feel, and now that's going away because it's looking like a concrete jungle. So now that leads me to the examples. There are other countries that have pursued that, and we know what that does, right? So I'll use examples from a wide variety of locations. So if you look at Maldives, which is also a small island nation, right? But you look at Male, the capital, right? So I'm from South Asia, which is why and as a development economist, I get to travel to a lot of these places. And when you look at Male and then some islands in French Polynesia that have been built up, right? You see that they kind of look like cities. They don't look like islands, right? When you go there, it doesn't feel relaxed, right? And there are, I won't get into environmental issues, like when you build up that much concrete, that increases the heat, right? It's just a very different feel. Like, or another very different example is in Hawaii, right? Oahu is a much bigger island than this one, but like they took Waikiki, right, where like sort of central Honolulu is, and they built that up with massive towers, and now it's become like a Las Vegas. It's like a circus there, right? That's not an island, right? We know what that looks like. And what why I'm so worried is that the path that you're seeing year after year with more and more larger buildings going up is going to change what this island is, right? Maybe, Caymanians decide, okay, yeah, that's the path we want to pursue. If you guys want to pursue that, that's fine, right? That's your right. Okay? But there has to be a conversation about that, right? Is that the right path? Is this what we want for the island? Right? So yeah, those are the examples, and then, so when we're talking about the nature of the island being changing, right? So it's like what the physical infrastructure looks like, and it's also like where Caymanians are, right? And I'm going to stop here because I already said a lot, but if I get another chance, I'm going to say something maybe a little bit more provocative and controversial. Okay?
Well, that's okay. We're known for being provocative on this show. In a thought-provoking way. Let's bring in the minister. Couple comments. Darlene says this professor needs to come back and very soon. So we will make this a regular feature without a doubt. Danilia says this conversation needs to be recorded. Thank you for sharing it. by the way, it is automatically recorded. So you can always go back to YouTube, Facebook. It's always there. So feel free to definitely share the link with other people who you think need to be engaged. Eden says it has to change. Real shifts to the tax burden have to happen. Luxury investment, multiple properties, and capital gains tax are good places to start. Ms. Valda says in most places in the world, you pay a council tax for properties depending on the value that pays for things like garbage collection, etc. Troy Leacock is here and says that you've described two of the fundamental issues in Cayman: a regressive tax system and no restrictions on property ownership. An annual high-value residential property tax is necessary and urgent. Jasara puts it in very simple terms. Her granny used to say, nothing that's free, not everything that's free is good for you. Yes, well, Aunt Lottie used to tell me that there are no free meals, so I don't know how much of anything is free at all. Dr. Frank is here with us, has since been spoken by the professor. Eden has a question, but let's go ahead. Minister, are you ready? I know that he's driving, so let's go ahead and bring him in. Good morning, Minister Kenneth Bryant.
Good morning, Sandra, and good morning to the audience, and good morning to your guest, Professor. I must say that I'm really, really enjoying the show this morning, because these are the discussions that we hear every day, but now you have an analysis in a more technical and economical theory perspective on the realities of what's happening. And I think it's so important that we have this conversation. But the reason I tried to trigger to come on the conversation was because obviously I'm a minister and a part of this way moving forward. And the thing I wanted to highlight, and maybe the professor could support my argument or disagree with it or help filter it, whichever one, is that politicians are human beings, and they are subject to want to be successful. And a politician, in most cases, do whatever they think can cause them to be more liked and more wanted. So they try to behave in a way that makes the people happy. And the people can only be happy based on their understanding of what you're doing and how it helps them. Now, unfortunately, I don't think there's enough economic discussion as to how things work that people think it's okay, because it reminds me of the theory of construction politics, where most voters will go, well, what have you done in your administration in the last 4 years? And if they don't see it, they go, well, you didn't do anything, rather than policies that fix systems.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Did we lose his connection there? Sorry, Kenneth, we're not actually hearing you. I think your audio.
Those types of things, like for years, and this is why I got into politics myself, is I can think of the last 5 administrations, and every one of their manifestos, see where they say, I did this building, I did this road, it's something visual. And most of the valuable things to the average person are not things you can see, but you feel the effects. But if you don't understand the effects based on a policy, then you will never understand the value. So hence the reason, it's a natural behavior that a politician wants to be reelected, right? So sometimes I think about, strong leaders in the world and their behavior to say, I know this is the best interest of my country. You may not understand it today, but hopefully in the long term, you'll see the benefit of it. But usually those types of people last very long in this type of politics, because you upset the people who put you there simply because they may not fully understand what exactly is happening. And sometimes it takes a while to understand the benefit. So naturally, politicians are going to say, you know what, I'm in here and I want to stay. So I'm going to do the things that are immediate so you can see, so you can reelect me. And that's why I see sometimes we have this problem with what you call 4-year politics. The things that fundamentally need to fix the country can't be done in 4 years. I myself and some of my colleagues were discussing that. I go, we have to start attacking some of the systematical problems from early, because we're going to deal with the politics of things and the reality of it, that when come 225, the question is going to be asked, what have you done? And if they don't understand from the theoretical economic value of it, and they don't see it, they're going to go, well, you didn't do anything, and I'm not going to vote for you again, right? So I'm so happy this morning that you have a professor on here to start to educate and break down the realities of what it takes to give quality of life back, and not just the roads, the buildings, and the development. Now, I'm not anti-development, I'm not anti-road, because these things are in most cases necessary. But the professor is 100% right. We do not do enough analysis of what that means in 10 years or 20 years, and then ask the public, is this what you want? I think the only person that I can recall ever doing that, based on my political memory, was Jim Borden saying, oh, you want development? Just remember, crime is going to come with it. Taxes are going to come with it. And I remember that story sticking in my head, and I think many of the public may remember it as well. So with development, there's positives, but there's negatives. And a leader's job is to be able to mitigate the negatives and get the benefits. But you can only do that if the people understand. And this is what our former leaders like Mr. Borden, even Frank McField, have been talking about, the education of understanding of how things work in our island that is moving so fast. Because our development is going probably about 15 times faster than your average developing state. So it's like, for one, a lot of people may not understand the economics of things, and trust me, this has nothing to do with whether you're educated or not. It's actually understanding the principles of economics. You can be a doctor and still don't get this. You know what I mean? So I'm just so glad that we're talking about it, and we have to focus on a national level these things, because even the person who has a high school education and it works at Burger King needs to understand these theories, right? So to the CEO of a major corporation, everybody needs to understand. So therefore, when you create a policy and say, yes, you may not see the value right away, or you may never see it with your eyes, but you feel it with the trickle-down things that happen in your life, that we have to get everybody understanding that. So politicians are not afraid to make decisions that are not just roads and buildings. I don't know if that makes sense. And Professor, I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, Sandy, may I?
Yes.
Okay.
My apologies. Yes. So Kenneth, thank you so much for that. And I think the other point that needs to be made is the fact that even breaking it down to people is important. But when it comes to governments having a unified understanding of what needs to be done, for example, Kenneth Bryan is the Minister of Tourism and Transport. That's his direct responsibility. But tourism and transport doesn't work in isolation from everything else that happens. It works in conjunction with healthcare. It works in conjunction with things that like yesterday we were talking about trying to get people back to work during the pandemic. That's part of his mandate, but he also has to rely on things that are happening in a different ministry, the Deputy Premier's ministry, with works, making sure that system is working, that those people have an understanding of their role in the process. So it's a collective effort that is required. The government needs to have a collective vision that can be disseminated to the people of this country. And whatever these policy decisions are, they have to align with each other as well. Like, we can't have a policy decision being taken by tourism and transport that takes us in one direction, whether it's regressive or progressive or whatever. And then we see other ministers doing things very differently in terms of their policy decisions. And I guess that's why governments have to work in cohesion with each other, and they have to know what the overarching policies are and changes that they're trying to make for the better interests of the people of this country. So, I mean, this conversation has certainly been amazing. Dr. Frank weighs in. He says this is by far the most important discussion in a very long time. Let us let this sink in, because we are too superstitious and we need to become rational about power to determine our destiny. Rational thinking needs to be encouraged. And he says, thanks, cuz, for this brave move. We promote logical thinking on this show every single day in some form or another, whether it's the smaller things about how we're thinking about, mask wearing, vaccines, all these things. We try to interject elements of logical thinking. So Escobar says, excellent topic and informed discussion. Well done. Miss Karen is here. Good morning, Miss Karen. Anne says, thank you for sharing in our language. So it's being broken down very succinctly. Good morning, Tracy. Linda's here. And Linda says, not just construction politics, the politics of extinction is now our reality. The beaches are gone. The mangroves are gone. The reefs are going to be dead by December. So
Sandra,
she's
just so you know, I don't know if you can hear me or not, but I can't hear anything you guys are saying, and I'm so mad because I really want to hear what the professor is saying. I'm so mad right now. But I'll figure it out. So don't mind me. I'm just going to come off camera for a minute, okay?
Okay, no problem. I'll actually just pull you out of the studio, and then you can let us know when you're ready to come back. So Anne says, thanks for sharing about our problems in a way we all listened and understood. Finally, these issues are getting attention. Thank you, Ms. Vernita. Now, Ms. Vernita makes a good point. She says we need to have a Civic Wednesday or whatever for these types of shows because we need to have more of them. So this has certainly lit the flame of interest. And folks, this is what it's all about. Every single day we get up, we have a choice of whether or not we're going to grow as individuals, whether or not we're going to grow as a country. How much we want to learn about the world around us and get factual information. And of course, that's one of the mandates here on CMR. We have a lot of fun. I like to think that learning can be fun and it can be entertaining, but there are times when we talk about silly stuff. And there are times when we have to get a little bit more serious like today and talk about important issues that impact all of our lives. So thank you, Vernita, for confirming that this show, which we can see based on the numbers, that is definitely a hit here today. Still 253 people hanging in there and tuning in. Troy says, do not underestimate the socioeconomic impact of 2 years of financial devastation of Caymanians in the tourism industry. So speaking now specifically to what is happening with the pandemic. So can we maybe have your thoughts about the economic impact of the pandemic, Professor? And then we're going to switch gears a little bit because we do have Sasha Tibbetts, who has been patiently waiting and in the back room for us as well.
Oh, and sorry, my apologies to Sasha for running over. So so let me connect a couple of the things that we just heard about. So that's some of the comments that the Honorable Minister Bryant made, as well as Troy's question about the pandemic and and vaccination and reopening. So first of all, I hope the Honorable Minister can hear me, but I want to congratulate him on two fronts. The one is, number one is that he described the life of politicians and the constraints facing politicians really well. And I want to congratulate him because this is, as economists in the scholarly literature, that's actually how we model the behavior of politicians. We think about that they're not just agents, that they have their own career concerns, voting, re-election concerns, right? And therefore we need to think about like under what conditions can they make decisions, right? And in fact, Gary Becker at the University of Chicago won a Nobel Prize like a couple of decades ago with exactly this insight that the Honorable Minister just had, right? So congratulations. And second, I want to congratulate.
So do you think we should give the minister a Nobel Prize?
Yeah.
The Cayman version.
Yeah. I mean, it was the exact same insight. And second, it is the job of politicians to actually listen. And so I also want to congratulate him for coming and participating in this conversation because, that's what we need in order to move forward, right? So, I'll say that, okay, so first about how political decision making, right? I completely understand, right, that you're hearing and, sometimes when there's tangible, visible projects like, a road got built, right? It's much easier to take credit for it as opposed to like pursuing the policies. That sometimes less is more, right? And if it's not as visible, it's harder for politicians to take credit for something like that. So, but it's important for politicians to listen to everyone, to all of us, right? And I think one of the problems that sometimes happens in decision making is something called the principal agent problem in the economics literature, right? Which is that you end up getting a biased set of voices of the people who are either loudest or the people who are like have a much more concentrated interest, right? So they have an incentive to like organize, and it's easier for them to organize and say that, oh, look, this needs to be done because this is what's good for the economy, right? Whereas there might be other viewpoints that are just not heard because they're too diffuse. Like there are too many people, like your listeners, like hundreds of people who have these viewpoints, but none of them is like taking, because they're struggling with their own life and families, right? They're not taking, they cannot make the effort, right, to go and directly talk to the politicians in the same way that a property developer might be able to, right? Right. So then what ends up happening is that you end up getting like the politicians start hearing like one side of the story and not the other, and you don't have balance in decision making, right? And that balance is required because again, I'm not here as an environmentalist, as a tree hugger saying, stop all development immediately tomorrow, right? That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying you need to have better balance in decision making. And like why I started thinking about this is that when I observed the makeup of the previous CPA, right, the Central Planning Authority, right, it didn't look balanced. It was like, oh, there's a lot of opinions of the construction industry, the real estate sector that are being represented on this council, right? But if it really is supposed to be the planning authority for the entire island, there has to be other voices, such as ordinary Caymanians' voices, not just people in the construction industry, not just people in the real estate industry, environmental voices. All those voices should come together, and that's how decisions are supposed to be made, right? There's lobbying from multiple groups, and then you choose the balanced path that's actually good for the country in the future, right? So there's also like some decision-making issues like that I hope Minister Bryan and his administration also takes up. And okay, so now let me like connect it to Troy's question, okay, on like reopening and what's happening to the tourism industry and how people are suffering here, right? Of course, it's a tourism-dependent economy, therefore people, the tourism sector is going to suffer. That's clearly the case, right? Now now connecting it to the decision-making failures, right? So one of the, I actually came to the island this time, and I had my daughter and a number of really young, smart Caymanian students, our students in various schools on the island, right? We put a group together, and initially our idea was, let's try and think about vaccine hesitancy and what we can do about that, right? But over the course of the past 2 to 3 months, we realized that, that may not be, like, we might not be able to play a very effective role there for two reasons. Is that like I didn't hear back from the health ministry very much after like suggesting this project, right? And so that made me think that, oh, you know what, I don't want to do something that the health that's not in partnership with the official decision makers, because it's not my place to start developing interventions that is not endorsed by the government, right? So that's one reason we passed on it. And the other reason we like switched our approach is that we started hearing some things about vaccine hesitancy that actually led to this conversation that we're having now. So let me go back to the minister. I hope you can hear me, right? And talk about like what those things we're hearing and what like we might need to pay attention to. Okay? So here's a surprising thing I learned, and it came from multiple sources, not just one source, that many Caymanians are not getting vaccinated, or people on the island, I should say, not just Caymanians, people on the island not getting vaccinated, not because they are deeply hesitant about the vaccine for some biblical reason or some conspiracy theory, or they're concerned about like whether this vaccine is still experimental or not, right? Those are there, but separate from that, another reason is that they don't actually want the country to reopen. Okay? And you know what, then when I thought about it, I was like, oh, at first I was like, oh, that's weird for 30 seconds. But after that, I thought about it. I'm like, oh, that's the conversation we're having now, right? Which is, this is like a protest vote, right? Which is, look, my country has changed around me. Like, I don't recognize it anymore. It's over, and it's actually much nicer when the tourists aren't here and we're not pursuing the same path that we've been on, right? So I understand, like, if you're not in the tourism industry, I understand that viewpoint, right? I think it's like, I understand where they're coming from. I might, whether or not we agree with it or not, I understand where it's coming from. So, but then, what politicians need to hear is that people are taking a risk for their own health, their family's health, for the public health, right? In order to cast this little protest vote. Okay. And you need to pay attention to that, because if they are taking the risk to their own health to do this, right, then maybe what the people are trying to tell you is that this path we're on is not the one I like. And we might want to think carefully about what other path we should be on.
Interesting. It's so interesting that you say that, because I do hear people saying, well, we've been closed this long. Can't we just continue to be closed? And I hadn't really analyzed that in sort of the larger sense of maybe what they're really feeling, like where that sentiment is actually coming from. I just thought that they were just being a bit unrealistic, and the realities of the economic impact of shutting your borders hasn't really hit a whole lot of people in Cayman as yet. And that's why they could afford to feel that way. I think that if the economic situation was different, you would find that rhetoric to be something else.
Yeah, and Sandy, sorry to interrupt, but like that's also telling you about something that we talked about earlier, which is like a breakdown of the community, the changing the nature of the place, right? In the sense that like there was a point in time, right? Say again, I go back 25 years ago, because that's when I started to know about the island, right, and to learn about the place. That there was a time where there was a very different sense of community, right? If we were hearing that there is a group of people who are really hurting because of the shutdown, right? Then other people would come forward and say, okay, we need to do something about this. Even if I'm concerned about the vaccine, we might need to do something about this. And that nature of that place has changed. That's what I mean by the identity of the place changing, right?
Right. Wow. And someone just sent us a WhatsApp message. They said that he just made a very good point, multiple explanation points. The people aren't stupid. That is a silent protest. Great show today. So very, very interesting. And I think that sometimes people don't even fully understand why they feel and think the way that they feel. Like they haven't really analyzed it. So I think what you've just done is you've certainly put it in proper context. Food for thought. Wow. Kenneth, the Honorable Kenneth Bryan rejoining us as we wrap up this particular segment. But please don't forget that we have the Vice President of Customer Service and Technology up next from CUC, Mr. Sasha Tibbet. So I know a lot of you have questions for CUC after seeing your last bill this week. So stay tuned for that. So Minister Bryan, any final thoughts on this segment of the show with Professor Mubarak?
Mainly one, please let's not make this be the only time. I think this could be a start of a very important conversation, even though I know that many of our other senior leaders have been trying to say this over the years. If we can, try to, what the professor has done is an amazing job of breaking down a very complex matter in the simplest form so the average person can understand. And one thing I know based on the level of my own success politically is communication is key. Absolutely. And it's going to be the key also to give those who make the decision the comfort level to say, listen, you can still be successful with a different approach. And they have to get that comfort and by way of understanding of the public. So I'm glad for this. I really, really hope you do it again. I'm going to actually ask you, Sandra, to pass on my details to the professor. I would love to have a cup of coffee with you, buddy, so we can talk more. The last point about what the professor said about vaccine hesitation is a very interesting point. I never thought about it that way. And I know I get teased a lot about, oh, you're going to do a survey on this, you're going to do a survey on that. That's the opposition line. I'm talking about me doing survey, but data-driven information is so important. And I'll be honest with you, I wish I could ask all of those persons who are not wanting to get vaccinated, why? Because if there's a silent protest, you need to understand that as a leader. You need to know what the motivating factors are so you can make the right decisions. Because, every country in the world thinks that based on science, and you're not going to question the scientists involved here, you're going to trust them because you don't know it. You're not a technocrat in this area. And you're going to say, the scientists say that, but you also have to bring in the other social effects and economical realities into the discussion. So the question people may ask is, well, why is the government pushing so hard? People need to understand what the reasons why we are trying to do these decisions as well, because you're a servant of the people. And if the communication isn't there, and not only the communication, but the understanding of the transfer of information and dialogue, if we're not both talking the same language, it could be like a person who speaks English speaking to a person who speaks Spanish, and you're just talking to each other and nobody understands what we're saying. So not only communication, but understanding of the communication for the decision making to make it easy. I'm sounding somewhat like a professor myself here, and I hope people are not getting lost, but it is so important. And Professor, I love your ability to talk common talk, right? And try the theories of it all. Anyway, I'll shut up here and say, please do this again, potentially next week, and pass on my information to the professor.
Well, we know the professor's very busy, and we've actually been trying to get this done for quite a minute now. And I want to, of course, thank the professor because, I think initially he wasn't sure. I don't even know if he'd heard of CMR before, but he wasn't even sure what we were all about, what we did. So he's like, I don't know if I'm ready to come on. And then Linda, by the way, big shout out to Linda Clark. She kind of pushed him in the right direction and said, listen, if you want to be heard in the Cayman Islands, CMAR is where you go. So anything that you're trying to get out there, whether it's political, at the political level, the politicians are listening, the leaders of this country, as you can see, listen to this program. From the premier straight down, the governor listens, his staff listens, everybody's listening, whether they want to admit it or not. So, and I think that more importantly, the people whose lives are being impacted by this on a daily basis, who really live in the trenches, are the ones who are listening and paying attention. So again, Linda, I think, is sort of she was the glue that brought this all together. So thank you. And again, if you've been missing, if you just jumped into the conversation, you've been listening to Professor Ahmed Mubarak. Did I get it better this time, Mubarak? We'll get there. I'll be saying it next time. I'll have it at expert level. But we want to thank him for coming on the program today. Again, he's a Yale professor of economics, and he's got a lot of experience and a lot of information and knowledge that we can facilitate these types of discussions on an ongoing basis. You've definitely been a hit, Professor. Everyone is saying, bring him back on. The more, the better. So we'll arrange to have him definitely come back as a regular feature. So thank you so much for coming on the program today.
Of course, Sandy, thank you for having me. And also thank you to the Honorable Minister Brian for engaging in conversation. And so I would love that cup of coffee, but also I wanted to say to him and to the rest of the government, I'm not here looking for a job or for money, consulting, or anything like that. Like, I'm putting it out there. I am very happy to contribute. Like, I work in several other countries, right? Whereas Cayman is a place I care deeply about because it's my children's future, right? So I'm very happy to engage with data, with evidence, right? Should you want that, right? But I'm going to stay in my lane and be responsive to what the government and the leadership.
Thank you.
That is exactly why I asked for my number to be passed on, because I'm a good judge of character within 5 minutes of a person speaking. And I know I can tell that you're not the type for, trying to get something out of it. So let's just take that conversation offline, and I really look forward to it.
Beautiful. All right, Minister, thank you so much. Professor, thank you. I think, this was your sort of inaugural visit here in the program. It was definitely a success. Everyone was engaged and tuned in. So we appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us. And the ease of the way that we do this show is that you can be anywhere in the world and join us. So even when you return to the US, we will definitely have you on the program as well.
Okay, but I hope to do it from Cayman again. Okay, bye.
Thank you so much. All right, take care. All right, folks. So again, that's Professor Mubarak. If you missed it, hit that rewind button after the program. But listen, don't go anywhere because we are not done. We've got CUC coming up. Let's give a big shout out to our corporate sponsors, Burger King and Popeyes. So why don't we do a giveaway right now? If you've been paying attention, I'm going to ask you a question about the first segment of the show. Miss Ann says, please have the professor come back. Not to worry, we will. So we talked about the professor's, background. This one's really, really easy, actually. And we said that he is a professor. So this is going to be a 2-part question for a gift certificate today. The first part is where is he a professor of? Now you have to have been asleep entirely this morning if you don't get that. And where is that university located? So we know he's a professor of economics. Where, what university, the name, and where is it located? Thank you so much, my dear, saying yet another fantastic show. And it's not over. We got CUC up next. So Jonathan got the first part of it. Yes, it's a 2-part question though, Jonathan. So what's the second part? Where is that university located? He only said it once, so that really required you to be paying attention or being quick on the Google fingers. So I'll let you guys spend another couple seconds. Big shout out to your friends over at Miracle Brokers, folks. Don't forget that they're your experts for logistics and shipping around the world or from one district to the next. They can move you on island as well. That's their level of expertise.
Miracle Brokers International is Cayman's premier source for all your packing, moving, and logistics needs. Whether it's moving a baby grand piano for a concert or moving halfway around the world, we have you covered with our team of local and international experts. MBI has over 30 years of industry experience and are able to get the job done for you right the first time. Contact us today for all your packing, moving, shipping, and logistics needs at 949-5989 or email info@miraclebrokers.com.
All right, folks. Thank you guys so much. It looks like Jonathan is the winner today. He got Yale, and then he had to think about it for a second. So Miranda said that Yale is in the USA. Well, the USA is a very big place. So yes, it is Connecticut. So Yale University is in New Haven, Connecticut. So good job, Yantel. Good morning. And says Sandy, our very own Cayman economist, Jimmy Hunter, gave this advice many years ago, and of course he was rejected by government. Well, I'm sad that maybe CMR wasn't around then. I don't know who he is, actually. I've never heard of Jimmy Hunter, but thank you. Miss Ann and her siblings, they have a wealth of information, folks, when it comes to just Cayman knowledge. So Jonathan, reach out to collect your prize. You get your choice of either Burger King or Popeye's gift certificate. Good morning to Miss Pat. Thank you so much. I appreciate the love and support. Julie, yes, you came in a little bit late on it, so Jonathan's gotten it for the day, but don't worry. There's more prizes to come. By the way, big shout out to Prodigy Jewelers. You guys, listen, I'm so excited. David has a surprise for me. I'm going to be going by there right after 10 o'clock, so not long after the show ends, and I'm going to see what he has for me. And I've been told it's something special. He said he's going to make me happy. And I said, listen, a lot of men have made that promise and very few have been able to fulfill it. So he's got a tall order to live up to. But boy, I'm excited. I love a good surprise. And my birthday is right around the corner. So I feel like this is going to be a birthday surprise and CMR surprise all in one. Good morning to Mr. Sasha Tibbetts. How are you?
Good morning, Sandra. I'm doing really good. That was a really, really interesting session with the professor and the minister. Yes. Very, very good content.
Yeah, he's, obviously very, very knowledgeable. So, and we appreciate you being so patient and waiting, because originally he was going to just be on for half an hour, but sometimes you just go with the flow of conversation. So now listen, folks, Sasha is the Vice President of Customer Service and Technology at Caribbean Utilities. He's only got half an hour left because he's got something to do at 10 o'clock. So we do have to let him go. So we're going to switch gears quickly. Corrine says, awesome job, CMR. I love CMR. Thanks for the guest. You're most welcome. And let's talk now about CUC. Now, obviously, we all received bills this month, earlier in the week, that kind of made us, raise an eyebrow. Sasha, we were like, ah! But I feel like every summer it's a repeat. I really do. For the past, I don't know how many years, I'm like, okay, here we go again. It's a cycle. In the summer months, everybody starts cussing CUC. Like literally you can go through, you know how Facebook does a reminder of time, like what
Facebook
you did a
memories,
year ago,
yes.
5 years ago. Yeah, the memories, right? It's always the same memory this time of the year. Where
I'm
everybody's like,
seeing some friends posting those. Oh my gosh, it was the same thing last year. And it really is a bit
exactly. Yeah.
a bit
So
of a
tell
bad
us
time.
first out of the gate, what are the factors during the summer months that make that CUC bill goes up beyond what's happening at this moment with the pandemic and so on? Because I think that adds another interesting layer. But just summer in general, what is going on during the summer that really makes those bills go up?
It really it's twofold, right? So I mean, I watched your show yesterday, and I saw that you put your usage history, and it looked at the whole year. That's a part of our bill that customers can use to kind of see if things are going right. I use it on mine personally because I always like to look at the current month versus the same month last year, just to see if there's something that's going wrong in the house and so on. But typically in the winter months, so December through March, you'll see that your usage is substantially less than the months like now, so July through to September. And typically that ratio is about 40 to 50%. I think if I remember from off the top of my head, in your personal situation, 2,200 in winter months and 3,200 kilowatt hours presently. And that is a very, very typical ratio. Personally, in my home, my lowest in the last 12 months was 1,100. And this month I was 1,525, which has been the highest for the last 12 months as well. So, I mean, that ratio, it's about 40%, right? And you have to keep an eye at if you're seeing that your summer months are more than 40, 50, 60% more than your winter months, then that's somewhat of an indication of something going wrong in the home. The other factor that very unfortunately typically plays in, and actually last year was the only time it never played in, is that the demand for fuel globally typically goes up in the summer months for whatever reason. And just if you look at the trend of fuel prices, the summer months tend to be a little bit higher than the winter months on average. And as a result, you get that double whammy of the energy is slightly more expensive than the winter months, and you're using more of it. And I think in your case, you may have had a problem with your solar system last month as well, which is a double whammy for you.
Yeah, Sasha, it was kind of a double whammy, right? But this is why it's important to pay attention to not just the dollar figure, like when you get the bill and you start complaining, oh my God, look at my bill again. But had I not did the show yesterday and really go, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Now that I'm looking at and I saw that there was a difference with what I was getting on the solar core. It was a significant difference that made me go, this looks wrong. It probably would have taken me months and months and months to question that, but because I looked at the details. So one of the things I want you to really talk to people about is, let's look at a typical bill. What are the elements of a bill? What are the things that they should be paying attention to in case there's something more that's potentially going on with them specifically? And how can people monitor their electricity usage on an ongoing basis?
Yeah, that's a really key element of sort of taking control of things is looking at what is. And I've heard of people saying that they go out and look at their meter a few times a month and so on. That's one way. It's tried and true. It's a bit old school. We provide information so that you don't have to do that. In fact, well, if you just look at your bill, obviously it shows how many kilowatts you used as a part of that bill. And we have that little graph that's on the bill that I find personally to be very useful because you can look at it and see what your trend is for the year. If you're seeing that, your winter months are less than say maybe, that one. So you see your January through March real low, and then your May through September, actually April through September, really high. And I bet you if you were to plot that against average temperature, the graph would be pretty much the same shape. Now, this is a 2020 data, which is a little bit of an anomaly because we had lockdown come in around the middle of March, right? So a lot of residents, this is better. Yeah. So this is more typical of what you would expect to see. And yeah, so 2,200 in January versus 3,600 in July. That's what, 50% increase? That's pretty normal. You may have had some little thing going wrong in your house last month, but I don't see anything that's really, really abnormal. It's just, this is just seasonal trends. You know, July was hot, just like it was last year. But I do see that there's a difference there of 3194 last year versus 3672. So you would want to take a look and see what has changed in the house. Did you add a new server? I don't know, whatever. Is there an additional person in the house? Is there an AC system that has been serviced recently? And those are kind of your typical things that you would look at. And sometimes it's just, hey, I decided that I wanted degrees this month instead of 78.
Yes. Well, I tell you what, I know for a fact that most of us forget about our AC until it stops working. I mean, we forget to do things like, you know, quarterly servicing. Once it stops working or it has a leak or something is obviously wrong, then we think, oh my gosh, I have to run out and fix it. But those sorts of things, I think we need like a tip list of all of the things that people could be doing on a regular basis to really help their homes be as energy efficient as possible on an ongoing basis. So I feel like we did everything great at the start. So, you know, I was telling people yesterday, changing out all the lights to LED, you know, trying to buy propane appliances where we could, the stove, the dryer, what else do we have? The tankless water heater. You know, all those things are great. Putting on even screen, what's it called? Protective film on the windows.
The film on the windows that you mentioned, yeah, that's really good too. Yeah. In fact, I think maybe we might need you to come in and do some promo for our energy efficiency program, because I mean, when I listened to your show yesterday, you pretty much did it all. The other thing that people can do to kind of just get a very, very easy measurement of how well their home is doing and whether or not there's energy efficiency savings sitting on the table for them. Take a look at the square footage of your home, and then look at how many kilowatt hours you're using in the summer months, right? And if you are using more than, say, 3/4 to 1 kilowatt hour per square foot of air conditioned space, there's money sitting on the table for you in terms of energy savings. We're seeing that, I mean, there's a wide range of that number that we're seeing with customers, but the most energy efficient homes are somewhere between 3 and 0.5 kilowatt hours per square foot of air conditioning. And we're seeing that there are homes that are much smaller. So you might have a 4,000 square foot home with a small than a 1,200 square foot home, just because of how the energy efficiency by design, and in some instances, perhaps some of the choices that the homeowner makes with the way that they use their energy. So it really, the size of the home really doesn't seem to matter near as much as how it's designed and built.
Right. So help us figure this out now. I want you to break this down for us, right? Because there's a lot of us who struggle with math. So what you're saying is, I think I need to bring up is this the graph, the information that you need? So this is your kilowatt usage.
Yeah. So
you're saying to basically take this.
So if I can ask you a personal question, how many square feet is this cooling? Square foot of conditioned
indoor
space.
Let me think. Say 3,500, because I think porches might make it closer to 4,000. But let's say 3,500.
So you're okay. So yeah, close enough. 3,500. So 3,500, and your highest month is 3,672. So you're about, say, maybe 1.1 or 1.05 kilowatt hours per square foot, which is decent. There's a lot on the by design. You can cut that in half. But I would really actually be interested to look a little bit further for you, because all the things that you've said, you should be in that range already. So there may be something that is, actually, how energy efficiency is like links in a chain.
Sasha, I think that it's probably a little bit more than that, because I was telling people yesterday about this attic space. We actually have a room in the attic that's also being cooled. That's probably a couple more 100 square feet. And I hadn't taken that into consideration just now. So, and that has
That's
to be
your
because
energy
of the server environment. That has to be at a particular temperature 24/7. So
can I ask you, is that where your servers are?
Yes. That's where some servers are located.
Okay, all right. So your house is not the typical house. So if you didn't have that and you didn't have some of your if you some of your business operations operating out of the house, from all the things that you've said that you've done, I would expect that if your house was just your residence, that your energy usage would probably be about 40% less, if not more. Because it seems like you've done everything right, and it's also really cool to hear that you've also got solar on your place.
Yes. Now, do you guys offer energy audits? I mean, do you have a number of questions? I'm going to try to get to as many of those questions as possible, but do you do energy audits as well? So if someone has questions about, can they be more efficient? Do you have any of your team members that can come out and look at what they have in place?
Yes, we can. We don't have a huge team that does it, but we do have some members of the customer service. The first thing that we'll do is sort of almost like a tabletop audit, because there's a lot that you can tell just from looking at your meter information. You as a customer can create an account and you log on to our system and you can see your usage history down to 15-minute increments. So just looking at that data with some help of one of our team, perhaps even over the phone, you can get a good understanding of what's happening. So one of the easy wins that's typically out there is you look at any given day, right? Just look at yesterday, for example. And if you and then we'll ask the customer and say, when were you not home, right? Or when was the house empty? And we look at that time frame and see, all right, well, this is all the energy that was being used by nobody, also known as wasted. Right. And so we'll do simple things like that. And the customer can say, okay, well, yeah. If I shut my air conditioning down, turn the TV off, make sure all the lights and fans are off, etc., perhaps I can chunk that $3 out of the day. $3 each day is $100 on your bill. Right? And so we can do help like that. We can also come out and take a look at homes. Like I said, we don't have a lot of team members at this point that can do that, but we can do it. But typically what we've found is we can point customers to the information just by talking to them over the phone and hearing their story. Much like I listened to your story yesterday and thinking of it, I would say, okay, I bet you this, and this. And we have a lot of customers that are in this situation. Interestingly enough, I was looking at some of the data and getting ready to come on here, and our average residential customer use about 1,100 kilowatt hours in a month, which is a lot less than many of the folks that you hear that are concerned with their high bills. And many of the folks with these high bills really do have a lot of energy efficiency options available to them. The problem, I think, is sometimes these energy efficiency options themselves cost a lot of money to invest, and maybe the access to that investment money is a challenge. And I know we're working with the bankers right now to create programs where they can get access to low-cost loans for these sort of things. We met with the Bankers Association just a couple of weeks ago to talk just about this and how can customers get access to the tools to help them save money. Yep.
Because it does cost money. And I think I mentioned, of course, we think of the big ticket things like solar investment, that's a big ticket item. But even when I think about purchasing the film, I purchased it overseas because getting it in Cayman was almost as bad as trying to get solar. It was ridiculous. And what I ended up doing was, even then, it was still a significant cost at the time with other things that we had going on. So I did it in stages. I said, okay, what are the windows that I want to prioritize? Obviously, sliding glass is a big window. So I thought, do that first. I also looked at where the sun comes in to the house, because there is, the sun shifts throughout the day. And I realized the reason why it was so evident is because when I would sit down and watch TV, there was always a glare on the TV. So the sun comes directly into a front door that has a little glass in it. And I thought, that's a lot of heat. And literally, Sasha, if you went and put your hand on that door
it's very
at
hot.
the height of the day, it was like you couldn't even touch it. It was so hot. And so we had to double insulate.
And so that's just heating up the air inside the house.
Yeah. So definitely some good points there. Again, trying to put in a tankless heater isn't cheap. It's cheaper to get a traditional water heater, but again, you got to look at the cost that you're going to spend heating up water, even when you're not necessarily using it. So let's get to some.
And while this isn't energy efficiency related, the one good thing about the tankless water heater is if for some reason 6 people in the house need to shower at the same time, you don't run out of hot water.
True. Yes. Let's go to a few questions. I saw one from El Rey about explaining the different, the various charges on the bill. So let's bring this up because we did have, again, yesterday, people who were a little bit confused about what all of these things are. So if you could go through.
Yes, I'm glad you brought this up because you were asking yesterday whether or not that core credit applies to the energy charge. And no, it applies to the bottom line. So if those charges on the right, if you add them all up, you'll get $744.79, right? So it's just a list of charges and or credits, and the total current charges is the sum. So, all right, let's go through them. Facilities charge. This is the charge that you have for each. People used to always call it as a charge for the meter, but it's not the charge for the meter. It's a charge for the service. And so there are some fixed elements of each service cost that's allocated to just that service being existing. I mean, one of the simple things is the cost of running a bill and collecting the payments and et cetera is covered in there. But there's a few fixed elements that are associated directly with just that service. And that doesn't matter whether you use 0 kilowatt hours or 2,000 kilowatt hours. That's the cost for that rate. The energy charge, this is the one that's 11.8 cents that you have there, the second line. That is the charge that goes to CUC's revenue. This is the line item that CUC operates under. So this covers all the cost of the capital, the O&M, and all of our financing activities, and basically covering the operations of the company. The core credit, that's money for you. That's your return on your investment, which I think you mentioned this month was a little bit low, but it's normally a little bit higher for you. The government fuel duty is exactly what it says. So that is the duty on the fuel that was used to generate electricity for you. The fuel cost is what we have paid the fuel suppliers for the fuel that was used to generate the electricity for you. The renewable energy cost is a little bit tricky to understand, but it is, in simple terms, it's the amount of renewable energy portion of that 3672 kilowatt hours. That is how much spent on renewable energy to deliver that to you. So that's a mix of energy from plant and all of the core and DR customers in the mix, which is approximately 6 or 7 megawatts at this point in time. And then the final one, license and regulatory fees, is just that. Those are the license and regulatory fees that we pay to Off-Reg.
Okay, quick question about the fuel charge. Do you guys mark up the fuel costs in any way, or is that directly how does that work?
No, it's
in terms of
we pay $1, we charge $1.
Okay, so there's no markup.
We are not allowed to make or lose money on it. Yeah, correct. Zero markup.
Okay. Now, someone else was asking about, does CUC hedge their exposure to potentially rising fuel prices by purchasing a futures contract? How does that work?
Yes, we do. I don't know if it's whether we do a futures contract. In fact, I'm pretty sure not. What we do is it's almost like I don't know the name of it, but it's almost like an insurance policy where we look at where the fuel price is now, and what we're trying to do is just protect consumers from spikes in energy. So maybe at the time when we buy the hedge, which is done in collaboration with Offreg, and they review and approve it. But that hedge is purchased to say, and I don't know the exact percentage, but say they're designed to protect against, say, maybe a 20% price increase for the period that the hedge is purchased. So say at a certain point we're buying at, I don't know, $2 a gallon, and we buy the hedge. The hedge doesn't pay in to relief unless the price of fuel goes above, say, if it's a 20% hedge, that it goes above 240.
Okay.
Right. And there are a couple of times where we actually have in the last couple of years had hedges come in to protect the customer from that entity, and that credit is put into the cost of fuel. So it actually does bring down the cost of fuel. But it's been pretty rare that those hedges have come into play. I tell you, last year when the cost of fuel went to where it was, we were scrambling to find hedges, but that market pretty much said, nope, we're not selling anything. And we couldn't, nobody was willing to sell a hedge at those prices, because I think everybody saw the writing on the wall of, no, that's not staying like that.
Right.
So,
now,
but we have bought hedges since then.
Right. So it's not that you necessarily have to have storage capacity on island to store it. If you purchase, you know, the hedge,
correct.
you can
It's a financial instrument.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Good to
Financial
understand.
Yeah.
So Siobhan says that please explain, if nothing and no one is at home for the better part of 8 to 10 hours for the day, no AC running, maybe just the fridge. So talk about these, what I call silent consumption devices, right? So
energy.
Everyone says, and I don't know if this is, sorry, repeat that for us. I think we missed it.
Sorry. We call them the energy vampires, the things that consume nothing and do nothing for you. Got to consume something and while they're doing nothing for you. Yes.
Right. So there's this big argument about turn off the AC when you're not home or leave it on at a higher temperature. You're the expert. Tell us what the expert advice is. Do we just turn it off completely? No usage whilst you're gone?
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll tell you what I do personally. The lowest energy usage is turn it off.
Right.
However, you may find that you prefer, for whatever reason, I don't know, maybe you have a dog that you don't want to live in that heat that lives inside your house, or a cat or whatever, and you make a decision. But the other thing that you have to factor in is your humidity in the home. So if you live in a house that is air conditioned, say 24 hours a day, or at least you leave it closed for 24 hours a day, there is a humidity benefit of leaving the AC running at, say, 81, 82 degrees, not really cooling, but just keeping humidity in check. And so that's what I do for personal choices. When I am, a space in my house is not occupied, I set the air conditioner to 81, 82. The AC will run a little bit throughout the day, just enough to keep the air dry. And then when the area is occupied, it's somewhere between 77 and 79. What I do, if you probably can see from the image, that my image, there's a ceiling fan running. You can have the same level of comfort with a ceiling fan running with a 2 degree higher set point. And the cost of running the ceiling fan versus the air conditioner for those 2 degrees is huge. So that's also something, particularly for those people that have a zone for just their sleeping rooms, their bedrooms.
Yes.
You know, if you're somebody that says, hey, I have to sleep at 74 degrees or whatever the number is, so everybody usually prefers to sleep in a cooler temperature with a big blanket because it's all cozy, you sleep better, right?
Yeah.
Can achieve the same level of comfort, turn the fan on, even on low speed, and bump the AC temperature up. I challenge anybody to give it a try. And the energy usage from the fan is 9 times out of 10, it's much less than an extra 2 degrees.
That's interesting. I didn't really know the logistics behind it, but I did mention yesterday that I had done it recently. I bought a standing fan that I've been keeping in my daughter's room. And yeah, I just kind of felt like it was cooler, but I wasn't really
Oh, absolutely.
necessarily paying attention to the AC level, which, I'm one of those people, actually, I'm good at 78 degrees most of the time. Most people think that's too warm. For
Right.
me, maybe 77, but 78, I'm still under the covers. So I think I have a different temperature. So what are some of these energy vampires, things that are put, like I've heard people say, I go on vacation, I come back and I still have a bill. What is running when you're not home that you not even realize it's running?
Your cable box, your internet router, your refrigerator, almost any electronic device that is off is still drawing a little bit of electricity. And that's why I say to people, take a look and see if you think everything's off in your house, which usually means that nothing's operating. Go look the next day at that time and see what your meter was registering. And you can see what that sort of minimum load is, because there always is a minimum load. So in my house, it's about maybe 400 or 500 watts. And when I go and look at it, I would literally have to, well, nobody's going to unplug their fridge when they're gone because they want to keep their food. So the fridge is always, but the fridge doesn't really use a lot unless you've got a really inefficient fridge, or if you've got a deep freeze that you keep in your garage, those tend to use a lot. But your internet router uses some, any device that's a transformer that you plug in. So all of your iPhone chargers or Samsung chargers, that little thing has a transformer in it. And even when it's not being used, if you plug it out, it's warm, right? And the reason why it's warm is because there's energy circulating through that transformer and you get some minimal loss. So if you have 10 of them plugged into your house and maybe they're using 1 or 2 watts each, it adds up over 24 hours, right? So, think about that. But so you can do certain things there. All the TVs that you may have, or whatever, amplifiers, or maybe your Alexa devices, those are always consuming a small amount of power. And to go and say, Alexa Echo or whatever it is not, you're not going to be able to detect that on your bill. But just know that if you've got, say, 20 smart devices in your home that are plugged in 24 hours a day, they're each consuming some small amount of electricity. But to be honest, even if you plugged all of them out, you're probably not going to see more than 5 or 10% change in your energy usage. Those things are there. They're hopefully improving your life, your quality of life, and arguably maybe that's okay usage of electricity. The big things is your air conditioner and you're not home to enjoy the cooling, but you're still paying the bill. That money is not improving your life. And quite frankly, we don't want to sell you that product. We want to sell you electricity that you're using to make your life better.
So Pat wants to know, in terms of the meters, and this is something I've heard a lot of people complaining about. They feel like when you went to smart meters, that you guys are not actually reading or getting a precise reading from the customers, that it's like an average. But based on what you said earlier, I can actually tell what the answer to this is already. But they're like, nobody's reading the meters, or there's something wrong with these smart meters. What's going on with the smart meters? How accurate are they? Are they more accurate than what you had in place from the standard meters that required someone to kind of go house to house? How do these new smart meters work?
So the smart meters pretty much work exactly like the older electronic meters. The only difference in the meter itself is there's a radio that's installed in it, and that radio communicates to our system to pass on the data that shows up on the screen as well. So the meter itself and the metering technology hasn't really changed all that much. It's more the communications on it. And if I can bring Alexa back into this, you used to, in the older time, you might have had a speaker, but you couldn't talk to it. But your Alexa speaker is still just a speaker. It's now just connected to the internet, and you can talk to it. It has a microphone, right? But it's still a speaker, right? So, and the same thing with our meters. They're still just a regular electric meter. You can read it on the screen, but we can also read it via the radio technology. And for transparency, we also allow customers to see that data for themselves, and just their data, by creating an account, so they can go and look at the meter in the same detail that we have available to help customers with their consumption. So, but the accuracy, we're getting the accuracy readings on the meter down to 3 decimal places. They're all certified by the same types of testing protocols that have been around for years, and the industry term is sort of revenue grade metering, and they're all there.
Johan has a few questions. Of course, some people are not satisfied with the answers. I'm seeing your responses, but Sasha can only give you the answers that he's going to give you. So Johan says, does the fuel tracker system still lag behind by 2 months? It seems to be off or out of sorts and negatively impacts consumer bills. Given the modern technology available, how is that even possible? So the pass-through cost then for fuel. And just on that point, Natasha did say that, she saves her bills and she's been reviewing them for over a decade. And the one thing that hasn't changed, like her consumption is pretty much the same. It's the increase in fuel, which is 100% attributable to her increase. And along the lines of fuel, Jonathan is wondering, can we purchase fuel from places like Venezuela?
So, okay, all right, that's a few. I'm going to do my best to remember all of those.
Yes.
The fuel factor is there is a 2-month lag. So, for example, the fuel that we purchase in January is billed in March. So there's that lag that's there, which is why, and I think people would probably remember the most, where last year we had that very huge dip in fuel prices. And so we didn't have a corresponding dip in the cost immediately, but we were able to tell customers, look it on your, I think it was the July bill where it really showed up. And also in August, even though the dip happened in April, right? So, and May. So, that is what it is. Right? It's, we buy the fuel 1 month, and in month 3, the bill is reflective of that fuel cost. Let's see what else was asked. I think Johan made a point about with the pass-through of fuel, CUC not being incentivized to save fuel, and that is a very, very interesting question, because structurally, in terms of the context of things, I think if you were to look at how our license is written, you could expect that might be the case. However, it's not the case for a couple of reasons. Number one, we have performance standards that we have to fulfill that off-reg monitors on our fuel efficiency, and if we fail at those fuel efficiency standards, we actually get penalized, and those penalties are returned to the customer. So it's a very strong. It's a very strong incentive to not. On the other thing, and I'm not sure that many customers realize this, but all of CUC's staff are also customers, and none of us get discounts, right? So in essence, we're working to make our product better for us, our neighbors, our family, and all of our customers, both in a sort of caring for the community and also for our own bills. I got that high bill that everybody's talking about. I got one too, right? And I don't get a discount. Richard Chu doesn't get a discount. And guess what? I'll get disconnected if I don't pay it either. Probably by myself. And it's so we're a big part of the community, and we we work to make our product better every day for that community. And I recognize that the cost is high. The cost of electricity in Caribbean in general is high. Just recently, we received survey results that we get on an annual basis from Carolec, which is a regional utility association where the utilities sort of input their rates. And much well, we weren't surprised, but I think a lot of people are surprised. Our rates are actually in the middle of the range throughout the Caribbean, with which perhaps the only outlier is Trinidad, because their fuel is free. The government gives the electric utility fuel from their oil industry, and everybody else, we're pretty much middle of the pack. However, we are at the highest level for reliability. So I think that there's something to be said there. We are working very hard to provide world-class electricity service. Yes, it is expensive, but that's primarily because we don't have major economies of scale, and we are still running on diesel engines, which brings up another point of, well, why aren't we using more solar? And I can tell you that solar is going to be a huge benefit with respect to the cost of energy. We put together in 2017 a plan. You've probably all heard of it, our integrated resource plan for energy for the next 35 years. I think the study goes out to 2045. And that plan showed cost of energy that was declined for that entire period. We've submitted that to OFREG. A couple of years later, they accepted the plan as a sort of a roadmap. But we really haven't got anywhere on any of those projects, but it's not for a want of trying on our end. Most recently, we submitted a project almost over a year ago that would save the customer over $3 million a year in fuel costs, but we haven't been able to get it approved. And so we're trying very hard to push renewable energy as much as possible, but we're not getting the opportunity to do it.
Right. Another question in terms of policy, I see that it was mentioned here. Nichelle mentioned that you guys are actually required to purchase your fuel locally. So going back to that question of if you can get it from Venezuela, that's not an option, apparently. So you can't import fuel?
It might. Well, we purchase our fuel with a requirement for the pricing of the fuel to be linked to a global index. And that's to prevent any kind of artificial margins showing up, right? So, and we competitively tender that between the two providers. And I think we have looked at external providers as well, but frankly, the local companies are well positioned to provide a good value because they have the infrastructure in place, right? Other companies that look to deliver fuel here are going to have to build that landing infrastructure to bring as much fuel on an island as we need. And really the only other alternative might be some sort of container solution.
Right.
Which works fine in small scale, unless the cost of that fuel is so substantially less. But we're buying it at market prices, which it's difficult to beat a market price. If the market says the fuel is whatever $1.50, there are not too many people that want to sell it to you for $1. You're going to get it for $1.50. Right. And then our contracts with the local providers have an adder which covers their costs for shipping it here, their handling, the unloading, and then the pumping to CUC site.
So Natasha's encouraging people to consider a tankless water heater. Mario says it's BS. You're still running a company at 200% profit because you have no competition. You force the people of Cayman to foot every single bill. So there are questions in there, and I suppose this comes.
Can I respond to that?
Yes.
So our return on investment is less than 7%. Or it's a plus or minus 7%. It kind of floats just up above and below 7% return on the value of the investment that we have in the country. And so there is definitely a misunderstanding that's out in the public, perhaps that sits from the old license that we had, which ended in 2008, where, and even that license didn't say it, but people used to say that we were guaranteed a 15% return. And I can tell you from looking at the results back in those days, we never got 15%. It might have been 11 or 12 or 13, but never would there be 15. Under the new license, the government at the time really negotiated very hard with us, and there was actually a rate decrease at the time of that new license being signed. And since then, our returns have been in the 6 to mid 7% range pretty steadily, which is still good, but it's not in the range of numbers that I hear quoted in the public.
Right. Now, in relation to some of the fees that are included in the bill, so there's the renewable energy charge, there's your licensing fees. People are asking, why are we having to pay those fees?
Well, I guess there's different business models that can exist. So every business that exists tries to recover all of their costs by what they charge their customers, right? And so, for example, if you own a retail store, you might buy a product that you want to sell for $10 and you sell it for, say, $18. And out of that $18, you're covering your rent, you're covering your staff, you're covering your business license fees, you're covering your work permit fees, electricity, water, etc. And maybe you have $1 or $2 left at the end to pay yourself. So which is a 80% markup. CUC has a different model, being a regulated entity, which is designed very specifically to keep costs to the consumer down, where we aren't allowed to make those large markups to cover costs and risks. And as a result, all of the costs that we have are put in full transparency to the consumers, and without markup, they're just straight pass through. The only line item that has markup is the energy charge, which we talked about on your bill earlier, and that's where that's all part of CUC's O&M, capital recovery, etc. And that's the line item where our profits come from. Right.
Johan makes the point of CUC hiring mostly Caymanians, and I think it's one of the highest rates of Caymanian employed companies for sure, and also for often sponsoring a lot of community events and being an integral part of the community, educating their staff, giving free scholarships. So yeah, that's an interesting point. Siobhan had a question earlier about whether or not—
Actually, can I chime in on that one as well?
Yes.
Thank you, Johan, for the comment. I just attended yesterday evening a networking session that we held for all of our scholarship recipients that could get in touch with. And I've been with the company for 23 years now, and I know we've been doing scholarships since 1989, but I was never really quite aware of how many kids we've helped out. Actually, some of them now are adults, and in fact, some of our executive are scholarship recipients. I was asking our HR manager this morning, so how many of these people have we done? And apparently it's over 65 scholarships that we've done over the years. And presently we're even doing more. I think we're doing 5 this year. We're doing A-level scholarships as well as technician level scholarships and degrees. And I think we actually have a master's scholarship going on right now as well.
Nathina, I don't know who she's referring to that looks 23, but anyway. Siobhan had a question earlier about, and I think you sort of answered this already in terms of the meters, but is there any sort of, she says here, average or gauging of a customer's bill? Does your actual contract allow for that? But I think you've answered that already. So
yeah, I mean, it does.
Precise reading.
I'll be brutally honest on this. There are instances where we have to do that, but I'll tell you, we're talking about maybe 5 or 10 meters a month where we're just not able to get a reading from either the radio is broken, but it's not anywhere near the level of what people are concerned about. So it does happen, but you're not going to find it happening 2 months in a row on your bill. So that if there is any error, it is correct the following month.
All right, folks, it's 10:02 according to my clock. That means that we have run out of time. Sasha, there were a lot more questions for you that unfortunately we didn't get to. Perhaps you can come back on the program again sometime in the near future.
I'd love to do that because I'm seeing them pop up on the screen here, and I honestly can't read them fast enough. But you've got a great viewership. They're all our customers, and I'd love to have the opportunity to talk to them some more.
Yeah. Nathania's still a little bit confused. She's asking about turning off or on the AC. In most instances, Nathania, unless you have a reason to keep it on in terms of energy efficiency, shut it off. Someone mentioned, I think it might have been Siobhan, said that when she goes on vacation, she turns off the bill at the breaker, or the electricity at the breaker level, and still she comes back to bill. How is that possible?
Shouldn't be possible. And I'd very much recommend that she take a look at that online portal to confirm whether her suspicions are correct. There's unless the person has gone for the entire billing month, there's going to be some usage from before or after they've returned. So sometimes a synchronization of time periods that you got to check out. But I very much recommend for those customers to create that online portal and go and take a look.
Right. Okay. So next time you come, why don't we actually go through the portal on the screen so everyone can see how to create it, how the CUC Connect works, and what are the benefits of that as well. So Siobhan, I'm going to recommend that you're one of those people that has CUC auditors come out and go through your house and see why you were gone for 9 weeks and still came back to bill. Maybe there's something going on there. Maybe somebody's stealing your electricity. Hello, not impossible.
Which we do see happen. We actually see that happen more often than you'd be surprised about. I mean, it's very
Siobhan,
it does happen.
Maybe one of those political leaders that you fell out with was coming borrowing some CUC from you. I'm just kidding. So maybe we can do, Sasha, have your team reach out to me, because I'd like to do a bit of a tag along for maybe an audit where we go through a house and we actually record it so people can see the sorts of things that you guys are looking at and what you actually do. So why don't we start with Siobhan? Siobhan, if you're up for it. Let us know. Ingrid is here to testify for the portal. She says it's helped tremendously. And I'm not using it right now, but I have used it for a business account before. And it's always amazing when I got that little alert on my phone that because I would set it at whatever, I can't remember. Like if it goes over this for the day, let me know. And you'd be surprised. Every day I was getting a little ping in terms of usage. So Siobhan is up for it. She says, yes, come by. So folks, listen, at the end of the day, CUC is a part of this community. They've been here for how many years? A long time.
1966. Before I was born.
1966?
Yeah.
Long time.
Yes.
So, the more that we know as consumers, the more that we understand the process. Some of it is obviously, yes, their contract with government. And I'm glad that Sasha explained the different business models of the fees and stuff, right? So for a regulated industry, they're actually giving you the breakdown of what you're paying for fuel, what you're paying for kilowatt usage, all the other fees that you pay. Other businesses charge you that. It's just that you don't see it. It's already encompassed into the end product pricing. And if you've never been in business before and you've never had to sit down and think about what's the cost of me doing business and how do I price my goods or services to accommodate for that, then you don't really probably understand business. I'm going to give you an example. As you guys know, I have a little, we sell streaming devices, right? And a lot of people, we have a service. Speaking of which, we have a service amount of $50 per month. Now, we've never gone up on that. It's been that from day one. And there are people who want to jump into the business and say, well, I'm going to charge you $25 a month, or I can charge you $50 a month because whatever. They don't understand, number one, the value of time. And one of the things that we provide beyond just what you're getting, what you think you're getting every single month, is customer service. And there's a lot that happens on the back end that the consumer doesn't appreciate. They just know that they turn it on and it works. They don't know what makes it work or what has to be done in order for you to get the latest of everything and the greatest of all the content that you want. So all of those things have an associated cost. My time has cost. There's a cost of accessing things. There's a cost of servers and all sorts of things that the consumer doesn't get. So all they know is I'm paying $50 a month. Somebody else claims that they can do it cheaper, but then it comes down to, well, what are they doing for you at cheaper? They're just trying to resell a product that they have no knowledge of. They have no understanding of. When it goes down, you're up shit creek, and they're just like, okay, whatever, we can't help you. There's so much more. And as a business owner over the years, I've come to appreciate all of the back end elements of running a business. That's why retail, it looks easy. Everybody wants to jump and open up a store because it's the easiest business to get into is retail. But boy, once they start understanding how retail works, how markup works, it's not just about the price of the good and marking that up. It's the price of everything else. So yes, you have CUC, you have staffing bills, you have, water bill, which might not be, a major contributor, but you have a lot of other things. Insurance, you pay licensing fees on your lease. You're paying the rent. I mean, there's a lot of cost to doing business. And you know what? I think maybe this is a whole other conversation that we need to have one day. For those of you who are inclined to be entrepreneurs, you need to understand the cost of doing business for your specific type of business. So why don't we do a show one day soon, inviting some business owners on, and we break it down for you. We talk about what is the cost of doing business. For example, someone like a Woody Foster, what's the cost of him doing business just for one of his businesses? I think a lot of you would really be shocked and surprised at what all is involved. But it's a conversation that we need to have because I think people need to be educated. Sasha, this is your inaugural visit to the show. So we had 2 newbies to the show this morning. Thank you for coming on. We look forward to having you and other team members back again. So please sign up Siobhan for an audit. I can send you her number. And let's go into a home and see what Siobhan could be doing more or better, or what is it that is really making her utility bill go up.
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. And for those customers that do want to engage us on how we can help them, we have our website, cuc-cayman.com, with some just information that's on there. But if you'd like to talk to one of our representatives or have an email with our representatives, you can reach out. Our phone number is 949-5200, and our email address for customer service questions of any kind is service@cuc.ky. Please reach out, and we'll be happy to try and help you get through whatever concern you might have.
Awesome. And Soka gives us some advice, which I don't know if I can follow, but she says that if you have to use blankets at night, your AC is too cold, turn it up. I don't know what it is
Absolutely
about a sheet.
Right.
I can't sleep without it.
Yes.
I cannot sleep.
But if you're using a duvet, you might have options.
Yes, I hear you, Soka, and I hear you, Sasha, but oh man, it's hard to not sleep. Even if in the middle of the night you like kick it off, like going to bed, you kind of want to get under the covers. It's just really weird. I don't know. It's just something about it. But anyway, again, Sasha, thank you so much. Listen, guys, I am appreciative of Sasha coming on, Professor Mobarak coming on as well. Very enlightening discussion today. We have a lot more to talk about. Tune in on Monday. There's a couple of events going on over the weekend. Sasha, I'm just going to pull you out of the studio here. Thanks again for coming on. We do have a number of events going on over the weekend, and you are most welcome. Lots of information to soak up today. But I'm on my way to get a surprise from David. So I'm going to lotion up because I got to look good when I get in public, folks. You know, lotion's important for your supple skin. And I am going to head out to see David. He's got a surprise for me, and by extension, a surprise for you all. So I would say give me about half an hour to get to him. We're going to live stream. So don't miss it. That's all I can tell you, because I'm excited. I love surprises. Don't you? Don't you love a good surprise? All right. So tune back in about half an hour or so. And if you're not on the WhatsApp news group, join in, because sometimes we try to send you all the links for that so that you can know oftentimes when we do go live. And let's see what this Friday surprise is. I'm excited. I feel like I'm my daughter at 5. She's so excited about her party. Every little thing. She said, you got a surprise for me. Sometimes it's just like a cookie. Like I'd be like, ooh, I've got a surprise for you today. Oh my gosh, you have a surprise for me. She's totally excited. So I feel like a kid today. I'm excited too. Let's go see David, folks. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you in a little bit. And then, we'll come back to that. But I think that's it for now. See you in a few. Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to another edition of The Cold Hard Truth. Make sure to check Facebook for showtimes and more information and the latest news at CaymanMarlRoad.com. Subscribe to our IG and Facebook pages to get the latest happenings.